Chapter 296, Rigidness and Flexibleness. What's wrong? What happened? Why was her attack's frequency and effect so different from the data I just recorded? Demon Whale Bombards was the reproduction of the Sand Sea Overlord's majesty, but this kick was as cold as a sharp knife. After abandoning the dragon scale armor and transforming her body into the flexible new structure, her body was as fragile as a frozen bean curd under this different attack. A spider's web could withstand nearly all prey's struggle, even if the prey was 10 times heavier than the spider. However, the web would be cut open easily by scissors. In a similar manner, Yunxi's attack broke Shea's defense easily. Cassina's martial arts wasn't as simple as Shea has thought. Demon Whale Bombards could crash the enemy who had hard shell and soft internal parts. When it was an enemy who had flexible body, Cassina would change her attack to God Wind Feet, which contained strong tear strength. Her feet could cut open a wound on the enemy's body like a knife, then tear open the body as long as it was still made of flesh and blood. Cassina, the battle god, had met a lot of enemies from different gods' domains, but she was still the winner of all the championships. No matter whether it was the giant whose defense was even stronger than a dragon, or the elemental spirit who theoretically couldn't be hurt by a physical attack, none of them could defeat her. After so many victories, the tournament of fighters from all gods' domains even changed its name to a Battle Gods Championship Contest. She finally became a living legend. Shea Long's adaptation changes were just some jokes in the face of Cassina's omnipotent martial arts. When Shea used the martial arts she wasn't familiar with, she had become more full of flaws in Cassina's eyes. Shea's green body emitted out a painful groan. She changed her physique again, created dozens of terrifying meatballs and detonated them. Since I can't parry your attacks, I'll give up dodging them. Attack against attack. Answer blows with blows. An eye for an eye. Let the world turn into hell. Let flesh and blood fly in all directions. Yunshi smiled again. Looking at Shea, Cassina's will saw through Shea's immature character again. All-range attack seemed to be powerful, but when the goal was just a small human and not an army nor a giant dragon, 99% of the power would be wasted hitting the air. If Shea was beating a weaker being, her all-range attack would be effective, but in the eyes of the current Yunshi, who had Hydra's physical power and Cassina's mental strength, it was undoubtedly a waste. Yunshi didn't even need to draw back nor to defend himself, he just took a deep breath. The world paused at this moment. No, wasn't something really happening? It wasn't possible. It was just because Yunshi concentrated his attention on one point. When he stopped to think other things, one instant had become an eternity in his mind. This was the supreme realm of all swordsmen and fighters. This was Cassina's realm. Yunshi's thinking was thousands of times faster than usual. He divided 1 second into 1,000 milliseconds, then used 1 millisecond to observe the environment around him. Shea's body was turning into countless meatballs and detonating in the air, covering all the areas around her. If there is no gap, I will create a gap myself. Even if it seemed that the meatballs were detonating at the same time, there were still rules to follow. Look for rules, find the rules and then destroy the rules. Get to the root of the matter. The ultimate goal of all martial arts was so simple. Using one's strongest part to attack the enemy's weakest part. Overlaying, shocking, piercing, all skills of using strength were for this goal. The human body was far weaker than a dragon's body and elemental creature's body, but human beings had wisdom, so they could inherit and develop martial arts from generation to generation, finally making it become a technique that could shake all of the gods' domains. Shea Longness thought that she could imitate Yunshi's attack by reproducing his attack's frequency, speed and route. She was totally wrong. In some sense, she wasn't fighting against an individual but the crystal of wisdom of all mankind. 1 millisecond later, Yunshi had stridden across the field of detonated meatballs and stood in front of Shea again. His fingers closed together like a sharp knife, his arm waved in the air like a nimble water bird dancing on the surface of the water. It was another new style which was totally different to Demon Whale Bombards. If Demon Whale Bombards was the acme of rigidness, then the dance of the water bird was the acme of flexibleness. The fist of rigidness could make the skies fall and the earth open up. The fist of flexibleness was as gentle and gorgeous as a white crane spreading its wings. The attack of the dance of the water bird wasn't world-shaking like Demon Whale Bombards. Yunxi's fingers softly scraped through Shea's neck, like a man that was stroking his lover's neck. The next moment, Shea's head dropped to the ground. Arg! Shea's mind fell into a mess. Compared to the attack before, this attack was even more weird. She even preferred to call it a disaster. A large series of erroneous data appeared in her sky sword. It even made the sky sword crash. Recording the data, error. Analyzing the goal's property. Error. Changing the form. Failed. Rebooting. Recording again. Shea longness. Opening the multiple evolving mode. It's over. Yunxi looked at Shea with disappointment. As a sky sword, Shea longness had too many weaknesses. She had the potential to be a new deicide sky sword, but before she actually did it, potential was just potential. At present, Shea longness was still too immature. I will kill you. I will eat you using the most brutal way. I will eat your every part, from your fingers to your toes. Shea cried. Even when Hydra stole her most valuable treasure, she didn't cry. P.S. Volume 1, from C1 to C62, Volume 2, from C63 to C144, Volume 3, from C145 to C244, of Starchild Escapes Arranged Marriage. Chapter 297, Destroy the World. Save the World. For the first time, Shea longness exposed a vulnerable side of her mind after descending into the water god's world. She cried and trembled like a fragile flower swaying in the midst of a raging storm. It was incredible, but what was really happening? As the strongest slime, Shea longness was cruel, because she could keep calm even when she was swallowing millions of lives. Shea longness was also naive, because she ate her lover simply because she had given up on herself. Probably there was no other sky sword that would have such an extreme emotion like Shea longness. She was gentle, she was cruel, she was warm-hearted, she was bloodthirsty. However, they were all a part of her, the child of the slime race, the sky sword who had the potential to be the slime race's god. If she was immortal, it was too unwise to expose her feeble side in front of others. It was undoubtedly exposing her weakest point to her enemies. However, it wouldn't have an impact on Shea longness. The more insane she became, the stronger the power she would obtain. Like an unknown chaos that could swallow all things in the universe, her body was emitting a creepy aura in the air. Goo! 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 More and more green meatballs exploded behind Shea longness, then they slowly opened their eyes. Eat! 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 Their voices sounded like the whisper of evil itself. Shea longness was the aggregation of the entire slime race's will. The sound formed by her will was the sound of the entire slime race. For the first time, Cassina's will seriously looked at Shea through Yunxi's eyes. Who? Ha! Yunxi's feet stood on the ground firmly, even though the ground itself was going to collapse at any time. His left hand pressed down, which looked as if he was going to touch his toe, and his right hand raised high in the air. His one hand touched the heaven and the other hand touched the earth. This posture was called Unity of Heaven and Man. It was a martial arts starting position, which was so strong that even Cassina wouldn't use it casually. In the face of the countless, unknown twisted creatures behind Shea longness, even Cassina, the battle god, had to get serious. Arg! Shea-Longness held her shoulders, avoiding looking at anything in this world. The things I don't like. The things that make me feel painful. I don't care if it is human, the world, or something else. Die. 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 Annihilate them all. The unknown green twisted creatures loyally responded to Shea's wish. They heard and would execute the order from the child of the slime race, the 10th Sky Sword. Destroy this world. Eliminate mankind. Let everything in this world come to an end. Ring out the bell of blessing for the great Shea-Longness. Along with the weird whispers, the green meatballs exploded one after another. However, they were not detonating themselves this time, but blossoming beautiful, delicate flowers from their bodies. The green flowers gestated one seed after another, blowing in the wind. These seeds floated in the air like scattered dandelions. Shea-Longness started to sow these seemingly delicate seeds to the sky. When these seeds dropped on the ground, took root and sprouted, they would finally cover the entire world, transforming it into something else. It would be Shea's garden. Apart from Shea herself, no living being would be allowed to live in her garden. If Shea hated a world, or liked it very much, she would want to occupy it, turning everything into her own treasure. This would also be the world's end. After being eroded by Shea, all beings in this world would only become Shea's food. Hydra, the water god, had seen this end, so she wished that Yunshi could do something to change this future. Can Yunshi change it? With the power he has obtained, can Yunshi reverse this coming misfortune? Looking at this scene, both Yunshi and Cassina were shocked. They weren't something as simple as the detonated meatballs before. It was a real power that was twisting, changing and swallowing the rules of this world. This was Shea-Longness' true nature. As if desperation itself just slithered out of Pandora's box, there was no hope leaving the box of the deepest nightmare. The countless blooming flowers were doomed to bring ruin upon this world. No. I will change it. Even if no one thought that this world could be saved, I will save it. Yunshi shouted out in his heart. Yes, this is the will, this is the spirit. In the name of Cassina, the battle god, I will help you create miracles. Cassina's will jumped with joy in his mind. Again, the time stopped. Looking at the infinite petals flying to the sky, Yunshi's left arm raised up and his right arm drew a circle in the air. Battle god genre anti-god martial arts, the magnificence of sky dance. A soft light appeared in Yunshi's hand. It was the light of the heavens and the sky's will, it was the light that would gestate hope. The next moment, Yunshi leapt into the air like a phoenix raised from the ashes of fire. Nothing could be used to describe how nimble Yunshi was. Like a bird flying in the air, Yunshi leapt to Shea-Longness from the sky. Yunshi's left arm caught Shea-Longness' right arm. Without the slightest killing intention, he brought her to the peak point of the water god's world sky, then put his right hand on Shea's chest. What? Shea-Longness opened her eyes wide, looking at Yunshi's right palm in surprise. Unlike the violent attacks before, this time, Yunshi's right palm gently put on her small breasts. As if they were standing in the center of an invisible giant vortex, all the green flowers in the air were attracted, flying to Yunshi and Shea-Longness. Sorry, I will drain your body. With a strange smile, Yunshi put both of his hands on Shea's breasts. Unity of heaven and man reflowing. Arg! Shea-Longness breathed strange sounds from her mouth. She felt that all her strength was being drained out of her body and flowing into Yunshi's palms. P.S. Volume 1, from C1 to C62, Volume 2, from C63 to C144, Volume 3, from C145 to C244, of Starchild Escapes Arranged Marriage. Chapter 298, The Magnificence of Sky Dance. Can a human body fight against a godlike terrifying presence? It wasn't possible even in theory. A brief life can burn brightly, but even if a human burned his life out, his self-sacrifice wouldn't be sufficient to let him obtain an earth-shaking power, which was innate to dragons and elemental giants. After all, mankind was just a lower middle-level race throughout all God's domains. Therefore, humans had to develop various martial arts, trying to find a way to fight against the incredible super beings in the universe. However, most of their attempts were useless. No matter how much effect they had made, even if they burned out their lives, it was still too difficult to cross the gap between mankind and other races. Like what Shea Longness and most strong beings thought, martial arts was just a method used to offset humanity's natural weakness. It couldn't let a human suddenly become as strong as a dragon. However, even if the probability was negligible, it still existed. Countless humans lived in countless gods' domains. There were always some people who could master the martial arts that could even threaten gods and demons. They were the legends above legends. Cassina, the battle god, was one of them. She was the sky sword that had the power to challenge gods and demons. As the child of the slime race, even though Shea Longness was not mature yet, her power was still sufficient to destroy a small world if she willed. If Yunshi wanted to fight against Shea Longness, he must have power at the same rank with Shea's power. This moment, Cassina's will was possessing Yunshi's body, helping him expose this power. Controlling Yunshi's hands pressing on Shea's breasts, Cassina used her secret skill which could only take effect on strong beings, the magnificence of Sky Dance. Infinite energy flowed backwards to Shea from all directions. They were the tokens of Shea's will, the seeds that would destroy this world. Too much. Too much. It can't go on. My body is going to explode. After obtaining Hydra's power of blood, this was the first time that Yunshi felt his body was going to overload. This was a martial arts Yunshi couldn't understand. Cassina subdued Shea's body and extracted Shea's energy, using Shea's energy to suppress Shea herself. It's really a godlike martial arts. This was the only idea in Yunshi's brains at this moment. Humans couldn't fight against gods and demons with their fragile bodies. If so, how about to suppress gods and demons by extracting their own energies? Absorbing their infinite energies with both hands, then attack them using their own powers. At this moment, both of Yunshi's hands were the channels to absorb Shea's energy. He could feel what a great amount of energy Shea had through her body. How many slimes are living in all God's domains? The water god's world was just a small world, but after half a month, millions of slimes had reproduced in this world. Judging from this angle, how many slimes were living in the countless gods' domains outside of here? Including Shea Longness herself, no one could figure it out. She didn't know how many slimes were living in the universe, but she knew that she was the strongest slime. She was the aggregation of the slime race's will. She had infinite potential. G.A. Sweat streamed down Yunshi's face. This time, even Cassina underestimated Shea. The energy in Shea's body and the energy that was continually pouring into Shea's body from nowhere, far exceeded Cassina's imagination. Shea's energy was far more than the energies from the god-blood creatures and demigods Cassina had defeated before. The energy Cassina had extracted even caused an energy tide phenomenon around Yunshi's body. For the first time, Yunshi understood the meaning of the idiom, ride a tiger and find it hard to get off. Countless green flowers dropped down from the sky. These green flowers, which would destroy the water god's world, had all returned to Shea's body. During this process, the green slime gem bracelet on Yunshi's arm blossomed, turning into a little green flower. Arg! It was just a little and delicate green flower, but when it blossomed, Shea cried and flew into a shameful rage, as if Yunshi just saw her deepest secret. This is After blossoming, the green flower immediately broke away from Yunxi's arm and flew to Shea's body, becoming a part of her breasts, where was right now covered by Yunxi's palms. The bracelet was a part of Shea's body. Oh, I remember it. These slimes were a kind of medium Shea used to descend into this world. Compared to the Spider Queen's body that was possessed by Shea now, Yunxi was more familiar with this part of Shea's body. At first, he had almost lost control of the magnificence of Sky Dance, but the familiar hand feel made Yunxi quickly refresh himself again. He could control the energy he extracted from Shea's body quickly and effectively flowing back to Shea's body now. Synchronizing the energy circuit. Absorb. 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 Once Yunxi found the breakthrough point, the next would be easy. Using the green flower on Shea's chest as the touch point, his energy mixed with Shea's energy returned to the deepest side of Shea's body. The powers that could destroy a world were all being tamped into Yunxi's body and Shea's body. Shea Longness was still being subdued by Cassina's martial arts. Her mind had dropped into a total mess, but her body still struggled subconsciously. Her face blushed and her skin was covered with a layer of pink. Her whole body was limp due to the touching that was too wonderful for words at this moment. P.S. Volume 1, from C1 to C62, Volume 2, from C63 to C144, Volume 3, from C145 to C244, of Starchild Escapes Arranged Marriage. Chapter 299, Judgment. The amount is too incredible. Putting his hands on Shea Longness' breasts, Yunxi was playing the sky style of the magnificence of Sky Dance. Big drops of sweat dropped to the ground from Yunxi's face. Even in Cassina's memory, she had never seen anyone who had such a great amount of energy. The strongest enemy she had seen before didn't even have 1/10 of Shea's energy. The life force Shea showed now was even hundreds of times more than the life force from all the beings in this world, and this was still far from reaching her limit. If Yunxi didn't find the green flower as the breakthrough point, even Cassina's, the magnificence of Sky Dance, couldn't suppress Shea's massive life force. Fortunately, a green flower was blooming on Shea's chest. Like driving in a light carriage on a familiar road, Yunxi easily broke through Shea's defense through the little flower. Depending on the familiar hand feel, Yunxi's hands expertly kneaded Shea's breasts, absorbed her energy and used her energy to suppress herself. This was the most important part of the magnificence of Sky Dance, the starting position, Sky Style. Most of Cassina's enemies couldn't even survive this starting position, they would be sealed and fall into infinity. However, Shea had too much energy. Even the Sky Style couldn't absorb so much energy. Yunxi had no choice and had to play the second stage of the magnificence of Sky Dance, the Earth Style. When the energy on Yunxi's hands had reached an incredible amount, that was enough to blow out the entire water god's world if Yunxi lost his control, Yunxi used the Earth Style without hesitation. Arf! The infinite energy tied around Yunxi started to turn into a giant light pillar. It was the sign that his energy and Shea's energy had mixed up. The next moment, they dropped from the sky to the earth together. Boom! The sea was separated by the strong shock wave. A gully appeared several kilometers wide, thousands of kilometers long. The bedrock of the water god's world groaned under this super impact. Infinite energy columns raised to the sky and formed the embryonic form of an incredible hurricane. I will absorb all your energy. Yunxi ground his teeth and stared at Shea. Success or failure will hinge on his next action. 9 crimson snake tails stood upright behind Yunxi, turned into 9 channels and transferred Shea's energy to the entire world, regurgitation feeding the dying world in this manner. Countless flowers blossomed in the dying world. They were not the flowers Shea released to destroy it world, but real flowers that could breed new lives to make this world become more beautiful. The sky style absorbed Shea's energy, and the earth style used the energy to generate flowers, which could heal an entire world. This was Cassina's godlike martial arts, the magnificence of sky dance. Shea's body twitched. Her face showed an abnormal red color under her mask and her green braids feebly flapped down. The massive energy spread through the entire water god's world and broke through the barrier between this world and the void. With the help of Cassina's will, Yunshi did the same thing the white holy dragon had done before. The infinite stars shone themselves in the sky, the soft light of the stars shone on Yunshi's body and let him feel a long-lost warmth. Oh, it's finished. Yunshi looked at Shea Longness, who was lying on the ground limply. It seemed that she didn't even have the strength to move a finger again. I have won. After absorbing and releasing so much energy, even Cassina got tired. Her will also started to fade away from Yunshi's body. Cassina's martial arts is really powerful. However, Yunshi still felt that something was wrong. Why did the lights of these stars look so real and familiar? Have I ever seen such a starry sky in the water god's world before? The next moment, a cold will suddenly descended and took over the control of Yunshi's body. It's over. The 10th sky sword, Shea Longness, you shouldn't break into White Lotus sword domain and release the seeds of disaster without permission. You shall be judged. A silver cold long sword appeared on Yunshi's hand and pierced through Shea Longness' body without mercy. Humph. Don't think it's over. I will be back. As her heart was being pierced through by the silver longsword, Shea opened her eyes and glared at Yunshi harshly, then her body started to shrink. 16 years old, 15, 14, Shea's terrifying aura was quickly disappearing. 13, 12, 11, as if time was flowing backwards, Shea's body noticeably became smaller and smaller. It was the ability of the silver longsword. Looking at Shea's body shrinking, Yunshi vaguely saw a part of the rules this sword could dominate. Even a strong being like Shea couldn't withstand it. Hydra, remember, no matter where you run to, you can never hide from me. I will take back the treasure you stole from me. And remember, my thing is always my thing. For some reason, Shea stared at Yunshi when she said it. P.S. Volume 1, from C1 to C62, Volume 2, from C63 to C144, Volume 3, from C145 to C244, of Starchild Escapes Arranged Marriage. Chapter 300, The Truth of This World. Shea, you know, as a lady fantasy creature, I won't return anything I have eaten. After all, we are not kids anymore, are we? Hydra looked at Shea Longness with a pleasant mood. He really changed it. My most beautiful, excellent bride defeated the strongest enemy on the stage called the End of the World. He had changed this world's doomed fate. Oh, what a perfect ending. He deserves to be my bride. Even though it will make Shea Longness regard me as a lifetime enemy, it's still a surefire business. Everything has been solved, the next is to enjoy the honey days with my cute bride. The water god, Hydra, deranged the rules of White Lotus sword domain, caused the 10th sky sword's irrational behavior, and protected the intruder from another god's domain. Even though you are a god, you have still sinned. You shall be judged. Yunshi looked at Hydra's happy face with a straight face, pouring cold water on her. Oh. No, wait. Hydra was dumbfounded. She forgot that the guardian of the door was still possessing Yunshi's body. A cold light reflected on the silver longsword. It cut through Hydra's necks accurately. 7 of 9 Hydra's heads dropped to the ground. Infinite blood squirted from Hydra's necks. Even though she was a god, she still cried with pain. Whoa! Puff! Puff! Being accompanied by some unknown sounds, Hydra's huge body toppled down to the ground. The intruder from another god's domain, the white holy dragon, you have sinned and shall be judged. The guardian of the door controlled Yunshi's body, brandishing the silver longsword again. A painful dragon's cry came from the void. Apparently, even the mist demon couldn't protect Mumu from suffering this attack. Yunshi finally understood how the white holy dragon was hurt. It was too incredible a power. It was the power from the guardian of the door, the great will that was taking over his body and Huayu's body. The rulings are over. After the 3 attacks, the oldest sky swords will fade away and return back to the door. Now, there was no legend-ranked power that was still living in White Lotus Sword domain. All the label factors that may break the balance in this sword domain have been cleansed. The guardian of the door wouldn't intervene other things, because all things had returned to balance. The lights of stars shone on Yunshi's body, which meant that this trial had finished. However, Yunshi surprisingly found that he didn't return to the Palace of the Stars but was still standing on the ground of the Water God's world. Is it over? After 15 minutes, Yunshi finally realized that the trial had finished. However, the scene around him didn't change at all. He was still standing on the island in the center of his world. Under his feet, there were innumerable blooming flowers extending to the end of the world. It's finally over. Yun-Kei walked to Yun-Shi from a distance. She was still carrying the black longbow, smiling toward Yun-Shi. You did it. Oh, I also didn't expect that I could do this. Thank you for your help. Yun-Shi looked around with a lot of questions in his head. Why didn't I return to the Palace of the Stars? Haven't I accomplished all the quests? Where will you go? You are a hero-ranked baker and the water god's favorite. Countless forces will be happy to open their doors wide for you. Yun-Kei looked at Yun-Shi with a mixed mood. If she didn't witness it with her own eyes, she wouldn't believe that Yun-Hai could defeat the 10th Sky Sword. Although Yun-Hai wasn't using his own power, but anyway, he had stepped into that realm and defeated a legend-ranked strong being. This experience was sufficient to bring him a bright future. Where will I go? Yun-Shi looked at the bright stars in the sky in confusion. He couldn't stop the perspiration from pouring down his face. Hey, the great stars, what's the situation now? Why did the real starry sky appear in the water god's world? Yun-Kei, where are we? After hesitating for a while, Yun-Shi questioned Yun-Kei with a fluke mind. Where else can we be? Of course we are in the central area of White Lotus Sword domain, the Storm Eye. Don't you know we were in the water god's world? Now, this world just begins to dock with the real world. Yun-Kei looked at Yun-Shi curiously. Due to some reason, we were involved in the water god's world. Then the battle between you and Shay Alongness broke the barrier between this world and the real world, so that it exposed itself in White Lotus Sword domain. Do I really need to explain such an obvious truth to you? The water god was this world itself. This world located in the center of the Storm Eye. From the beginning, water god's huge body was the nature of this world. Now, due to the attack from the guardian of the door, the water god had to sleep again, and this world gradually restored its true appearance and started to dock with reality. Probably the water god's world was the main reason why the space in the storm eye was so unstable. Cough, you mean, this is a real world? Not just a dream. Yun-Shi touched his white emperor mask and clearly felt that the water god's power had become very weak. However, it just became weak, but didn't disappear. Hydra just slept again but didn't die, so her god power still existed in the White Emperor mask. Yun-Shi could even call his 1,000,000 brides figures to appear again if he wanted. Yes, the water god's world was a real world from the beginning. It was hiding in the center of the Storm Eye. We were chosen by Water God to be its apostles and other people were chosen by the Sky Sword to be her apostles. Now, we have won the battle, so we have no reason to fight with other people again. Yunshi didn't know what facial expression was under his mask. He knew it must be very bad. Wait, so the trial wasn't just a dream. What does it mean? It means that I really married a million girls. P.S. Volume 1, from C1 to C62, Volume 2, from C63 to C144, Volume 3, from C145 to C244, of Starchild Escapes Arranged Marriage. Chapter 301, The Revived Sailing Jellyfishes. No, not only so. Because Yunshi thought that this was just a dream, he did too many speechless, shameless things in this world. The nights with the Lamia Queen, the Mermaid Queen and the Celian Queen. The morning with Lulu. The hot, crazy night he spent with Black Moon. If they weren't just my dream but something really happened, how will I can't be an upright gentleman anymore. Raise your head and look around. Look, this world was saved because of us. Standing beside Yunshi, Yunkei smiled, looking at the earth with blooming flowers. Yes, after paying so much, isn't this the future I always looked forward to? A vibrant, sunny, hopeful world that could let everyone enjoy a peaceful life. This was the future she wanted to create, even if she had to stain her hands with countless people's blood before arriving at this conclusion. The trial in the water god's world was a brand new start for her. It was the turning point of her life. She witnessed the most terrifying disaster here, and the most incredible hero who saved this world. Everyone had given up and thought that this world was doomed to be destroyed, but he still tried his best to create miracles. Perhaps he was still a man with a lot of weaknesses, but no one could deny that he was a real hero that had saved a world. Yunkei learned a lot from him. Of course, her faith wouldn't change. No pain, no gain. In order to save more people, she had to abandon a few people. To survive, mankind must pay a lot of painful prices. However, she understood that there were really some people who could create miracles now. Yun Hai, who was standing in front of her at this moment, was the creator of this world's miracle. He was shameless and salacious. He had a kind of abnormal desire for beautiful girls. He married one bride after another. He was often addicted to young girls' bodies. However, even so, he was still the hero who saved this world. Now, Yunkei finally understood why Hydra trusted Yun Hai so much and conferred to him all its powers. Because he had the ability to create miracles with Hydra's power. Even when he was facing Shay-Alongness, the Sky Sword, he didn't falter and retreat. When Yunkei considered it again, she admitted that she couldn't do it like Yun Hai. Probably when she realized the desperate gap between her and the Sky Sword, she had conceded. She didn't feel shameful about this, because Shay-Alongness' power was even more terrible than she had imagined. The gap between the hero rank and the legend rank wasn't even possible to be counted by numbers. Yunshi's mind was in a total mess now. He still couldn't accept the truth that the things happened before weren't his dream but reality. He did see the bonfire, which meant that he could revive here. However, he was also told that this trial wasn't in a dream world. If so, no, maybe the dark forest and the tall tower weren't just two dream worlds too. Perhaps he really went to two worlds that really existed. Undoubtedly, the stars have such power. They could create such a miracle, which meant that what he had done in the trials really happened in the reality. Perhaps the boundary between reality and dream didn't exist in the eyes of the stars. The stars' power could create the bonfire that could let him revive, could drag the beings around him to the same trial world and change their minds. Nothing is true in this world. Yunshi suddenly had this idea in his mind. Which part was his dream, and which part was reality? When did the dream and the reality start to mix up? When Hydra saw him suddenly appearing in her world, what was she thinking? The lights of the stars finally faded away. The water god's fantasy island emerged out of the sea's surface in the storm eye. Everything came to an end. However, Yunshi's troubles had just begun. Under the starlight, one beautiful translucent creature after another swam out of the sea's surface. They had beautiful silver bodies and emitted different translucent lights in accordance with their body sizes. They were sailing jellyfishes. Yunshi immediately recognized these fantasy creatures. They were the mascots of the water god's world, and the avatars of the source of the power for this world. When this world was threatened by Shay-alongness, they disappeared, indicating the impending doom. After Shay-alongness was defeated, they revived again. Their appearance meant that the water god's fantasy world had really returned to peace. Even though the water god's fantasy world couldn't hide itself from the prying eyes of the outsiders, and the water god fell to sleep again, these sailing jellyfishes were still strong fantasy creatures. They could protect this world. These beautiful sailing jellyfishes were what Hydra left for Yunshi before it fell to sleep. They were one of Yunshi's deserved rewards for his heroic deed of saving this world. Of course, the biggest reward was Yunshi's identity now. The silver mask emitted soft and sacred lights on his face. All the sailing jellyfishes were dancing happily in the air around Yunshi. If the butterflies of death stood for death, then these sailing jellyfishes stood for life. They were the two special fantasy creatures of this world itself. Congratulations, our Emperor. Thank you, our Emperor. All glories belong to you, our great white Emperor. P.S. Volume 1, from C1 to C62, Volume 2, from C63 to C144, Volume 3, from C145 to C244, of Starchild Escapes Arranged Marriage. Chapter 302, Parting the Three High Priestesses. Sounds came together with the sailing jellyfishes. The Celian Queen stood for mankind. The Lamia Queen stood for the Lamia race and other deep-sea races. The Mermaid Queen stood for the mermaid race and other shallow sea races. They sang together, presenting their blessing to Yunshi. This world's god, Hydra, had fallen into sleep, but standing for Hydra's different characters, the three queens still existed. Their song was the gratitude of the entire water god's world. At the same time, the love system of the stars also beeped inside Yunshi's mind. The trial world's name, Water God's Fantasy Island. The main quest, The Water God's Bride, completed. Optional side quest 1, Girl Fights Evil Dragon. Because you have joined the Water God's camp, this quest is not selectable. Optional side quest 2, The Apostles' Call, completed. You have obtained the White Holy Dragon's trust and the right to use dragon language magic. Please remember the dragon's name, Mumu Solibert, firmly. You will have a great adventure in the future. Optional side quest 3, The Truth About the Mist, completed. I have witnessed the Mist Demon Tree at the end of the Water God's world. Your White Emperor mask has transformed into its ultimate form. Optional side quest 4, To Love, Starchild. Perfect execution. Life is too short, just enjoy it. Even though you will face your angry ex-girlfriend's death chase, you should still go ahead and learn how to obtain more love. In order to fight against your ex-girlfriends, please go to obtain more girls' love. This quest will become an irregularly scheduled quest, but you can only use the girl's power in your trials, our Starchild. The hidden quest, The God's Dream. The most beautiful bride, hold your sword and put on your princess dress and dance for the god. The last melody played for you. As the chosen one, you stepped onto the final stage and became the most beautiful bride, fighting against the sky's sword and protecting this world. Don't mind gender, don't mind race. As long as your heart is still burning hot, you can create all miracles. The God's bride is the person who loves this world, who can risk everything. Because of your heroic behavior, you obtain a reward from the god, the identity of this world's White Emperor. You have the power of 1,000,000 brides in this world. From now on, you are the only emperor of the water god's fantasy island, you are the only master of this world. The bigger your dream is, the more larger this world is. Go ahead, Starchild. Is this the last reward of this trial? Yunshi touched the white emperor mask on his face with a strange look. This time, the stars didn't grant him seeds as rewards, but let him become the water god's fantasy island's white emperor. When Yunshi read the mask's information again, it had totally changed. The equipment, white emperor mask, the token of the water god's bride, soul binding and indestructible. Additional ability 1, water mist field. You can summon mists to cover the ground, sky, and sea. It will be weakened if you use it outside the water god's fantasy island. Additional ability 2, Mist Soul Army. The 1,000,000 girls are willing to fight for you. It will be weakened if you use it outside the water god's fantasy island. Additional ability 3, Summon fantasy creatures. You can't use it outside the water god's fantasy island. The 2 fantasy creatures in this world will respond to your summon. You can summon countless butterflies of death from the mist tide or summon the fantastic sailing jellyfishes from the sea. This reward, Yunshi was shocked looking at the explanation. All the abilities of the water god's apostle have been saved. Even though they will be weakened when using them outside this world, they are still the abilities of a god's apostle. Even though he can't use summon fantasy creatures outside the water god's fantasy island now, it doesn't mean he can't use it forever. Not surprisingly, Yunshi couldn't use his 1,000,000 brides power now, because the side quest, to love, Starchild, had finished. But this quest will become an irregularly scheduled quest. What does it mean? Compared to these rich rewards, Yunshi directly ignored the income from obtaining the White Holy Dragon's real name, Mumu Solibert. Because Yunshi didn't kill too many lives personally in this trial, he didn't obtain too many souls. The 2 additional abilities of the White Emperor Mask, Water Mist Field, and Mist Soul Army, are already hundreds of times better than the rewards he obtained in the 2 previous trials. Even if Yunshi could obtain 1,000,000 green hippo's souls, they were still not comparable to the 2 additional abilities. Moreover, the White Emperor Mask was the token of the master of this world. He was the real emperor that had been recognized by this world itself now. Well, I think it's time to say goodbye now. Yunshi was still immersed in the shock of becoming the real White Emperor. After a while, he finally realized that Yunkei was speaking to him. Are you going to leave? Yunshi asked in a reluctant tone. Yunkei offered him too much help in the water god's world, including the expansion plan, 1,000,000 brides, which had really changed the fate of this world. He knew he wasn't the only hero who saved this world. There were 2, Yunshi and Yunquebec. Yes, there are things I must do. I don't need any praise, you can be the only hero who saved this world. Yes, this is fine. She didn't want to stand in front of the public, to be the sparkling savior like Yunhai. Since a long time ago, she was doomed to stay away from all glories and praises forever. Her sword and bow would accompany her till the end of her life. If it was just her wish. If she could see the miracle happen to this world again before the end of her life, she would already feel satisfied. So, goodbye Yunhai. P.S. Volume 1, from C1 to C62, Volume 2, from C63 to C144, Volume 3, from C145 to C244, of Starchild Escapes Arranged Marriage. Chapter 303, Rebuilding the World. The warm sea winds blew to the 2 people from sea level. They swept past the sailing jellyfish's soft tentacles and rolled up a lot of petals into the sky. Looking at Yunkei walking away, Yunshi couldn't help but ask, will we meet again? Why did I ask that? Yunshi didn't know, but when he looked at Yunkei's lonely red figure walking toward the horizon, he suddenly had this impulse. He suddenly felt that if he didn't say something, some relationship between them would disappear forever. I don't think we will have the chance. Yun-kei paused for a while, but didn't look back. If she stayed in this world, she would be one of the saviors. As long as she was still wearing the water god's mask, she would be this world's hero, being longed for by countless people. If she chose it, it would be the most satisfying life she ever could enjoy. No one would doubt or hate her, because she was a savior, just like Yun-hai. People would mold a statue for her, and her heroic behavior of fighting against a sky sword together with Yun-hai, and would be remembered by the people in this world from generation to generation. She would become a legend. There are things I must do, so I can't cease to advance. Goodbye, Yun-hai. She didn't want to say more. Her mission and her belief were all the sins she was willing to carry on her back. She was a princess, but she never expected to be saved by anyone. She would change her fate with her sword and bow herself. Looking at Yun-kei's back going further away, Yun-shi felt a sense of loss. He and the archer in red were just two different kinds of people. Even though they had communicated for a short time in their lives, their fates were destined to go in different directions. Indeed, he could sense some deep, dark fate that was carried on Yun-kei's back. In his eyes, Yun-kei was always very strict and conscientious. Was he a soldier? No, he couldn't be a common soldier. Was he a prince? Well, he gave Yun-shi that feeling. Yun-kei's hard effort even touched Yun-shi's heart. For the first time, Yun-shi saw such a person who perfectly met all the criteria of a hero. Yun-kei wasn't a natural hero like Hua, he didn't have great talent. However, he held his weapon tightly and never regretted walking on the road of his life. Wish you invincibility in Quebec. Maybe someday in the future, we can meet again. Yun-shi put his hands on his mouth, shouting at Yun-kei's back. Yun-kei stopped for the last time. She still didn't look back, but just waved her hand. We won't meet again. You are the White Emperor that is beloved by this world. Your fate has been linked tightly to this world. You have everything in this world. You are the Supreme Emperor here. You only need to take the responsibility and rebuild this world. That is the most important thing you should do. As for me, I will set forth on my lonely and bloody journey again. You are the bright sun that can warm all things, you are the emperor that can obtain countless girls' hearts and bodies. I'm the solitary star, I briefly shone brightly in this world, leaving my blood-colored trace behind. I know nothing apart from battle, so I'm not at all appropriate to be a manager of a country. The road of my life is on the battlefield. I will remember this place, because this is the first world I have saved. I won't stay here, because there are more people waiting for my salvation outside of here, even if I will bring them bloody storms at the same time. Waving my hand, it's my last farewell. We will never meet each other during our lives again, Yun-hai. He had really gone. Yun-shi sighed after confirming that Yun-kei had really left the water god's fantasy island. What should I do next? Looking at the blooming flowers on the ground, Yun-shi could clearly feel that the entire world was recovering. The 4 world towers were still protecting the world. Following some rules even Yun-shi himself didn't understand, the 4 towers opened an energy barrier, protecting the whole of the storm eye inside it. Although this world had merged into White Lotus Sword domain, the water god's fantasy world was still unable to enter. Only Yun-kei had left from the water god's fantasy island. The Starwing Knights girls and other Sword Palace disciples were still staying on the island. Boom! Before long, another change happened. The Celian city, which was protected and hidden by Hydra in its body before, appeared again, right under Yun-shi's feet, in the center of the island. At the same time, Yun-shi's 1 million brides also returned. This was just the start. The cities and villages that were protected by Hydra before, appeared one after another. However, their locations had been changed to adapt to the new world. One sailing jellyfish after another flew to the cities and villages, helping the people rebuild their hometowns. Via the sailing jellyfish's eyes, Yunshi could clearly see the new appearance of this world. Circling around the Celian city, 8 islands located at the 8 points, representing the 8 heads of Hydra, and Celian itself was Hydra's biggest head. Yunshi's 4 world towers were at the 4 corners of this world. Taking the 4 world towers and the 8 islands as the world standard lines, the sailing jellyfishes were working hard to rebuild the new map of the entire water god's world. P.S. Volume 1, from C1 to C62, Volume 2, from C63 to C144, Volume 3, from C145 to C244, of Starchild Escapes Arranged Marriage. Chapter 304, Yunshi's Choice. After saving this world from Shea Longna's hands, there was still a great amount of Shea's energy, which was extracted out by Casinas, the magnificence of Sky Dance, left in this world. The sailing jellyfishes were using it to rebuild this world. As a side effect, as the emperor that was recognized by the god and the world, Yunshi also got benefits from it. Infinite spirits of heaven and earth flowed toward Yunshi and filled his body, but didn't cause any burden to his body. One circle of beautiful light after another circle spread out from the place where Yunshi was standing at, sending ripples across the world. One mist soul girl after another appeared in the ripples and smiled at Yunshi. Their originally thin bodies were becoming more and more substantial and beautiful. As the reward of helping Yunshi defeat Shea Longness, they also obtained the blessing from this world. All of Yunshi's 1 million brides had obtained the reward. Especially the Starwing Knights girls, because they were the cores of the Mist Soul army, they obtained much more benefits than others. The energy that had returned to their bodies were the purest energy from the source of this world. Only after obtaining the permission from the world's will, ordinary people could have the luck to absorb this treasure. Because Hua Yu and Xiao Chao's help determined the final victory, they obtained the most reward. Their bodies were covered inside with a great amount of the world's energy and all their mortal natures had been washed away. They hadn't reached the hero rank, but their bodies had become more perfect than most hero-ranked beings. To them, there was no barrier that was still barring their way of reaching the hero rank. They would reach this realm naturally in the not-too-far-away future. This is the world. Yunshi had become the new core of the water god's world. He could clearly see the truth now. The entire water god's world was a large garden building on Hydra's body. Hydra's body was the bedrock. The islands, no matter whether they were big or small, were all Hydra's heads and scales. Hydra's blood were the sea and rivers. Hydra's bones were the mountains and ground. Hydra's breathing was the source of the mist that was covering the entire world. This world was transformed from Hydra's body. This was the reason why Shea Longness attacked this world without mercy. After being judged by the guardian of the door, Hydra had to sleep again. Before she closed her eyes, she handed this world over to her most beautiful bride. From now on, Yunshi was the master of this world, the White Emperor. This was the biggest reward from the stars. As long as he was still in this world, he could gain infinite power from its source, this world. Since he was the highest apostle and the water god's bride. In this world that was covered by mist, he could summon wind and call for rain. His Mist Soul army could build countless wonders in this world. Since they would never die, they would become the most problematic defense to any intruder. Only if he ordered, the people all over this world would move for him. The Celian city and the 8 new islands would offer him endless energy, and the sailing jellyfishes and butterflies of death would follow his command. Even if he left this world, the abilities wouldn't disappear. Hydra was a real god. As Hydra's bride, Yunshi could use her power anywhere. In order to obtain all of them, Yunshi only needed to do one thing: put the White Emperor mask on his face. After the battle with the Sky Sword, the White Emperor mask had become the token of this world's master. If Yunshi was a common hero-ranked person, he would live in this world, just like what Yunkei thought. As the owner of this world, he could do everything here, enjoying the most comfortable life. At any rate, there wouldn't be any paradise that was better than this world. This world had accepted Yunshi completely. No matter what kind of demand he asked, ridiculous or shameless, the people in this world would do it for him without doubt. At this moment, a little devil was whispering in Yunshi's heart. Stay in this world. This is your paradise, the heaven that could satisfy all of your wishes. You are the only person that was beloved by the god. Before the water god wakes up, you are the only avatar of the god in this world. Whatever you do, you will be forgiven. No people would doubt your will. If 1,000,000 brides aren't enough, you can look for more beautiful girls in this world. As long as you ask, the world will meet all your requirements. There wouldn't be any opportunity that is better than this. Why are you still hesitating? Oh, it really is a paradise. Yunshi looked around this world. After suffering this devastating disaster, this world was recovering. Through the eyes of the sailing jellyfishes, Yunshi could see all the corners of this world. Hua Yu and Xiao Chao were still standing at the South Pole and North Pole of this world. They were absorbing and understanding the rewards they've just obtained. Other Starwing Knights girls were in Celian. After returning to the real world, they had retrieved all of their real memories. Looking at the native girls around them, their minds were in a huge mess. Other Sword Palace disciples were in the wilds. Unfortunately for them, there were a lot of wild animals surrounding them and looking at them with hunger. The twin witches just arrived at a town being rebuilt. It seemed that they were trying to understand what happened in this brand new world. Yunshi's childhood sweetheart, Hua Hua, rushed into Celian and looked for someone with anxiety. Hua Hua, looking at the familiar figure that was running in the streets of Celian, Yunshi finally made his decision. P.S. Volume 1, from C1 to C62, Volume 2, from C63 to C144, Volume 3, from C145 to C244, of Starchild Escapes Arranged Marriage. Chapter 305, What a Strange World 3 days later. The bell of blessing echoed above the sky of Celian again, and everyone knew the reason. It was for the Savior, the person who is beloved by the God, the highest apostle, the Emperor of this world. He was the White Emperor. Compared to this title, his real name was gradually forgotten by the public, because people thought that only the title, White Emperor, was the most suitable name for him. Notice. Notice. The Great White Emperor will hold a ceremony celebrating the rebirth of our world. He and the 3 high priestesses will all attend the ceremony in front of the water god's temple. A young girl wearing a priestess robe was running on the street. She announced the news from the temple with excitement on her face. Great! I missed the White Emperor's proposal ceremony. What a lifetime regret it was. This time, I won't miss this ceremony again. A girl of a deep-sea race stood up with excitement. She just arrived at Celian from a remote island. The conch behind her ears had beautiful patterns. It's not too late. I heard that the Great White Emperor will continue his proposal this time. The young priestess encouraged the foreign girl. The battle with the Sky Sword happened and ended too suddenly. Before a lot of girls of the deep-sea races arrived at Celian from their habitats, Yunshi had saved this world from being destroyed. These girls were also saved by the White Emperor. As the blood descendants of Hydra, these girls of the deep-sea races felt regretful for not offering their powers to their White Emperor. Really? Where is this news from? The girl of the conch race was so excited that she subconsciously opened the conchs behind her ears. She wasn't the only person who got excited. All the girls who didn't arrive at Celian when Yunshi started his proposal all cocked their ears, waiting for the young priestess news. I heard it from our Celian queen. In order to expand the members of the Mist Soul Army, the White Emperor will propose to more girls in this ceremony. Humph. What a shameless man. Only one girl looked at the excited girls on the street with disdain. If she didn't hear it with her own ears, she wouldn't believe that there was actually such a salacious man in the entire universe. He has married 1,000,000 brides, and still wanted to marry more. How can the people in this world accept this? This world is sick. Oh, hello, traveler from the outside world. When seeing Hua Hua, the girl who was carrying a huge broken sword on her back, the native girls greeted her with passion. Hello. I'm looking for a person. Have you seen her? Hua Hua opened a portrait from her arms. In the center of the portrait, it was a young maid looking to the front with her gentle eyes. Her peaceful aura immediately attracted the girls' eyes and made them feel close. Although she was wearing a maid uniform, the uniform looked like a gorgeous princess dress on her body. Oh, what a beautiful girl. The White Emperor will like her if he could also see this portrait. Her appearance isn't inferior to the 3 high priestesses. Who is she? Her clothes is cute, I want to wear it too. The girls on the street praised the maid's appearance. No matter whether they were humans or girls of the deep-sea races, their hearts had all been captured by the portrait. Sorry, I don't know her. Yes. She is a beauty, if I saw her before, I wouldn't forget her. We don't have this kind of clothes in our world. What's it made of? It's cute. The Celian Queen said our world will soon start to trade with White Lotus Sword Domain. Maybe we can buy this kind of clothes at that time. I really look forward to it. The native girls chatted with each other like a group of sparrows. The water god's world was Hydra's garden. It was located in a special area in White Lotus Sword Domain, the Storm Eye, and was still protected by the spherical energy shield. The entire water god's world was carried on Hydra's back. Theoretically, it was a world that could move freely in the void. Originally, Hydra had carried the dying world dropping into White Lotus Sword Domain. After sleeping for thousands of years, the embryonic form of the water god's world finally formed. Now, the water god's world had been born again and started to show its infinite potential. The people here were planning to get in contact with the people of White Lotus Sword Domain. When Hua Hua arrived at Celian, her identity as an outsider was quickly exposed. A lot of people were observing her quietly. This world is too strange. Are you really willing to marry the so-called White Emperor? Hua Hua felt confused about the thoughts of the people. Why does everyone in this world think that the so-called White Emperor is a good man? Hua Hua admitted that the White Emperor had a great talent, and his Mist Soul Army was also extremely strong. She was rarely forced to release her real power in the past. However, that was quite another matter. He proposed to 1,000,000 girls and married them all in front of the public. This thing itself was ridiculous and twisted. The most ridiculous thing was that the people in this world accepted what the White Emperor did. He successfully married 1,000,000 brides and put engagement rings on their fingers. Hua Hua even heard that this shameless man slept with different girls every night. Not only so, he didn't even sleep with a girl, but 2, 3, and even more. No. I can't keep thinking about this. It's too impure. This man. Even though he is the savior of this world, it's still a bit too much. Don't you people feel it strange? Girls, you shouldn't entrust your lives to that man. Because he is the White Emperor. He is the apostle who saved this world, he is beloved by our God. As the descendants of the water god, isn't it a natural thing to marry the White Emperor? P.S. Volume 1, from C1 to C62, Volume 2, from C63 to C144, Volume 3, from C145 to C244, of Starchild Escapes Arranged Marriage. Chapter 306, Hua Hua's consciousness. It's a natural thing. How can it be possible? Strange, it's too strange. What's wrong with the girls in this world? Hua Hua had an indescribable sense of anxiety in her heart. Why do I care about this? No matter what the custom in this world is, it has nothing to do with me, does it? My contract with Shay Alongness, the Sky Sword, had finished after she was defeated. Now, I have nothing to do with this world. But, why do I feel so bad looking at these girls' smiles? A strand of hair on her forehead, her special item as Yunshi's childhood sweetheart, the so-called jealousy radar, ran rampant after she came into this world. Look! Even now, as long as I close my eyes, would see all the girls on the street being marked in my jealousy radar as red points. Red color, dangerous color, enemy's color. Since 3 days ago, after Hua Hua arrived at Celian, she felt that she just stepped into her enemy's camp, because she could only see bloody red through her jealousy radar. From 13 years old to 300 years old, from mankind to non-humans, from common girls to exalted priestesses, all women were marked as enemies in Hua Hua's radar. Red, red, and red. Red is everywhere, and is still increasing. Hua Hua felt that her brains would overload if she still stayed in this city. What's wrong with this world? I know my little Shi is easy to attract girls' eyes. If I didn't protect him in our small town, his pure body would have been deceived by the sword skill teacher, the aristocratic miss from the nearby town, or the daughter of the flower shop. Especially during that summer, he had almost been eaten. When she walked on the road of the small village, Hua Hua could recognize the girls who had bad ideas for her little Shi with a glance. However, it seemed that her jealousy radar was broken this time. There were far too many enemies, to the extent that she could see no difference in them. She just calculated it roughly and had a desperate calculation. She had over 1 million enemies in Celian. Unexceptionally, these enemies were all the so-called White Emperor's brides. Can it be, although Hua Hua didn't want to imagine it, but her instinct as Yunshi's childhood sweetheart told her that there must be something very bad that happened to her little Shi. All clues pointed to one truth: Yunshi was the so-called White Emperor. Hua Hua felt her outlook was overwhelmed after realizing it. From what she heard in the past 3 days, the White Emperor was a complete hedonist. After saving this world, he spent all day with his brides. After he returned to the Water God's temple, there were always young girls with cries echoing in the sacred temple, accusing his crimes. No, he can't be Yunshi. My Yunshi is a gentleman, he won't hurt anyone unless it is absolutely necessary, and his dream is to marry the girl he liked, enjoying a peaceful life in our small village for a lifetime. He can't become such a shameless, salacious bastard. He is the kindest human being I have ever known. He can't be the White Emperor. Even though all evidences showed that the White Emperor was very likely to be Yunshi, Hua Hua still firmly believed in Yunshi. Then, what went wrong? My little Shi isn't a man who will marry 1 million girls. Can it be the mask? Is Yunshi being controlled by the terrible silver mask, so he was forced to make these mistakes? Yes, so that explains everything. Anyway, it couldn't be Yunshi's own will. Yunshi's body had been possessed by that evil mask, so he made these unforgivable mistakes. That must be the truth. My little Shi is in a very dangerous situation. If continued, soon afterward, Yunshi would become a piece of junk that only wanted women every day. As his best childhood sweetheart, I can't let it happen. I will save Yunshi from this painful predicament. After the perfect ratiocination, Hua Hua's eyes lit up again. Yes, she believed in her childhood sweetheart, she believed in her doomed lover. No matter what he had done under the control of the evil mask, she would forgive him and save him at all costs. Even if she had to fight against an entire world. It doesn't matter, my sky-flying bloodline won't be bounded by any rule. Even if the entire world supported the White Emperor, she would support Yunxi. To her, Yunxi was 100 times more important than this world. White Emperor. I will beat you down. Holding the broken sword in her hand, Hua's heart had fired up. She had planned to release her real power, which she didn't even use when she was facing Shenlongness. She clearly remembered that she couldn't use this power casually. She was told that if she wasn't going to die in the next second, she should never use this power. The reason why she hadn't reached the hero rank was because she needed to do her best to suppress this power. To ordinary people, strong bloodline power was an aspirational treasure, but there should be a limit. To Hua, her sky-flying bloodline was too strong. Even she herself felt afraid sometimes. Till now, she didn't know her limits herself, or rather to say, does the limit of her power really exist? Therefore, even when she faced Shenlongness and Hydra, she didn't feel fear. At that time, she felt as if her bloodline was telling her that once she aroused her true power, she didn't need to worry about any of the two legend-ranked beings. P.S. Volume 1, from C1 to C62, Volume 2, from C63 to C144, Volume 3, from C145 to C244, of Starchild Escapes Arranged Marriage. Chapter 307, The Sorrows of Lulu. Where is this place? Who am I? Walking on the street of Celian alone, Lulu looked around with her lost eyes. In her brains, her memory was telling her that she had two different lives. In her first memory, she was a common girl born in a small town of White Lotus Sword Domain. Her sword talent was pretty good, so she could become a disciple of White Lotus Sword Palace. She had also joined a female group called Starwing Knights. In her second memory, she was a common village girl that lived in a small village of the water god's fantasy island. Because she had a great talent in pharmaceutics, people admired her and she finally married the great apostle. She was a pharmacist that was loved by the people. They were two different lives and two different memories, but they were totally mixed up now, making Lulu feel confused about who she was. The self that lived in the White Lotus Sword Domain was just a lucky girl who could join the Sword Palace. The self that lived in the Water God's world was a pharmacist girl who luckily married the apostle she liked, and she was really enjoying her married life. Apparently, the first memory was clearer and more structured. She could clearly recall all the details of her life in the first memory. Undoubtedly, this memory couldn't be fake. However, the self that lived in the Water God's world was also herself. She clearly remembered her excited feelings when she first met the apostle, her anxiety due to the apostle's unexpected proposal, and her nervousness when she looked for the apostle the next morning. She didn't want to deny these memories. Although the time she spent with the White Emperor was short, every second was sweet and memorable. They were all her precious memories. Before she took back her real memory, she really thought that she was a native girl of the Water God's world. Till the starlights dropped and the sky sword was defeated, her past memory recovered, and she fell into a contradiction at the same time. Because she doubted which memory was real, her personality even started to split. One side of herself insisted that she should return to White Lotus Sword Domain, accomplishing her dream as a disciple of the Sword Palace and a member of the Starwing Knights. Another side of herself wanted to stay together with the White Emperor forever, living out her days with him. Two different ideas struggled against each other in her mind, and she didn't want to give up any of them. It had nothing to do with right or wrong, she just needed to face this dilemma. To Lulu, whose life had just been changed, it was too difficult a choice to make a choice. Why did you choose me? Can you also be a person from the outside world? My dear White Emperor. Lulu touched her animal ears. They were the gifts she obtained from this world. She could switch her ears from animal ears to human ears freely, and the two different forms corresponded to two different talents. When she was in her human form, her talent was sword skill. When she switched to her animal ear form, her talent would also be switched to pharmaceutics at the same time. The two different talents were the root of her distress. Why? Originally, she should feel happy to have this fantastic transformation ability, but the two forms brought two different ideas. When Lulu was in her human form, she wanted to return to the Starwing Knights, become strong together with her partners and accomplish their dream of becoming the top female knight. When Lulu was in her animal ear form, she knew she had become the White Emperor's bride. She wanted to accompany him in this world forever. No matter what difficulty they would face, she would never leave him. Compared to her human form, her animal ear form had a stronger will. After all, she was a talented pharmacist that would reach the hero rank very soon in this form. Her existence was like the most excellent self in Lulu's imagination. When she was in this form, she had a great talent, could do everything she liked, and had an admirable lover. It would be perfect if I can split into two and let them enjoy each other's life. Lulu never felt so annoyed in her heart. However, she wasn't the only one who was suffering this pain. Other Starwing Knights girls were also facing the same trouble. Their minds were also in a huge mess just like Lulu. Their experiences in this world were like the most perfect dream they had ever had. They all became the most excellent personalities in this world. Because they were all the disciples of the Sword Palace, most of them were still human and were strengthening their sword skill talents in this world, therefore, it was still acceptable after taking back their real memories. They just thought that they became stronger after having a nice dream. Only Lulu, because her pharmacist talent was aroused but not her sword skill talent, her personality even started to split. Perhaps everyone is waiting for me. Lulu knew it. All the other girls were waiting for her choice. Should I return to White Lotus Sword Domain, or just stay here to be the White Emperor's bride forever? The girl's heart struggled with anguish. Everyone was waiting for her choice, but she was hard-pressed to make a decision, because she was too pure and kind to make the choice. No matter what her decision was, she would certainly hurt some people because of it. Lulu. She is Lulu. She is the White Emperor's first bride. The girls on the street and in the streams looked at Lulu with envy. She was the White Emperor's first bride. The White Emperor was beloved by the Water God, and Lulu was the first girl that was chosen by the savior of this world. She was the only person who had this privilege in the entire Water God's world. She was doomed to be written into the history books of the Water God's world. Her name would be praised and remembered by the people of this world from generation to generation. P.S. Volume 1, from C1 to C62, Volume 2, from C63 to C144, Volume 3, from C145 to C244, of Starchild Escapes Arranged Marriage. Chapter 308, The Melancholy of the White Emperor, the 1.06 millionth. The Lamia Queen raised her tail and knocked on the bell in the Water God's temple. The melodious bell of blessing echoed above the sky. It announced that in the Celian city that was circled by hazy mist, another White Emperor's bride was just born. The ceremony is going to start. The Mermaid Queen pressed her chest and sang in a sad tone, "Why? I love you so much. Even 1,000 brides' love was no match for my love for you. Why can't you only look at me? Why can't you only love me forever? You just find pleasure in it. Let's go." The Lamia Queen said roughly. The Mermaid Queen was her best friend, but she still didn't like her sentimental character. The Mermaid Queen's special habit toward tragic love was too twisted. If she could just give up this special habit, she could be the best singer amongst the 3 high priestesses. After all, a mermaid's voice could elicit the strongest emotions hid in people's hearts. People even would die for it in legends. Oh, even though you are beloved by thousands of people, I will still take your eyes, letting you only look at me. Oh, Lamia, wait for me. The mermaid queen sang and chased after her best friend, leaving the bell of blessing. Today, the White Emperor would hold the first ceremony after the reforging of this world, and also, it would be the first day the water god's world would be open to the outside world. At the same time, it would be a day of picking brides for the White Emperor. This time, hundreds of people in the outside world had accepted their invitations. They would be the witness of this special ceremony of the water god's world, so nothing could go wrong. The 3 high priestesses and the White Emperor would attend the ceremony and welcome the visitors from the outside world there. From this day on, the water god's world would build the communication channel with the entire Sky Sword god's domain and become a member of this god's domain. With Hydra as their backup force, the preliminary talk went very smoothly. A Sky Sword had agreed to attend this ceremony and would admit this world's legal status in the name of the delegate of the Sky Sword god's domain. Compared to the ceremony before, the atmosphere of this ceremony was more joyful. The people from all over this world all gathered in Celian and celebrated the new life of this world. Of course, there was also a very important thing. Due to this thing, the ceremony was delayed till this day. In the water god's temple, in front of Hydra's 9-headed snake statue, the Celian queen was gently helping Yunshi put on his clothes. Yunshi was the only emperor in the water god's world. His identity had been recognized by the will of this world. Unknowingly, 9 different lines appeared on his sailing jellyfish's robe. Each line meant a blessing from Hydra. Due to the 9 lines, Yunshi's sailing jellyfish's robe had become the highest artifact in this world. Each line stood for an opportunity of rebirth. As long as Yunshi was still in the water god's world, he could revive 9 times after being killed, and the lines were rechargeable. With the glory and holiness of the god, Yunshi looked taller and brighter than usual. Looking at his body was like bathing in the sunlight of summer. The Celian queen felt extremely thrilled. You are more perfect today than anyone. Touching Yunshi's hair with her fingers, the Celian queen lowered his head and kissed Yunshi's cheek. But I'm originally a flawed man. Looking at his image in the mirror, Yunshi was at a loss. It can't be me. Coincidentally, Yunshi felt the same confusion as Lulu, although his memory hadn't been sealed like hers before. White Emperor is my identity in the water god's world, but is it really me? The White Emperor is the man that is beloved by the god, the most perfect apostle, the savior of this world, the man who defeated Sheolongness. As for me, I'm just an excellent baker, and my dream is to live a peaceful life in my small town. Are they really the same person? Are both of them me? If I'm still Yunshi, I wouldn't marry a million brides. I wasn't a lecher who couldn't control my desire. If the situation continues, I can't be a gentleman at all. Originally, before I entered this world, I thought I could honorably go to the Sword Palace, in the identity of Hua was made. No person could be born perfect. People think that you are perfect, because you are indispensable to this world, so they ignore your weaknesses. The sun illuminates all things and brings vitality to the world, but it also burned all things into ashes sometimes. However, we still praise the sun. Our White Emperor, you are the unique sun of our world. No matter where you are from and where you are going to go, this world will be your power forever. Therefore, have confidence in yourself. The Celian queen saw through Yunshi's thought. She held his cheeks in her hands and blocked his mouth with her lips. Everyone loves you in this world. You are not only the favorite of the god, you are also beloved by our world. You helped this world stop the tragedy that was doomed to happen, therefore, as the descendants of the god, we will let you become a legend. Our White Emperor, my lover, 1,000,000 brides is just a beginning. Yunshi looked at the Celian Queen's face with an air of resignation. He knew he couldn't change her ideas. She wasn't the only person who had this idea. The other two high priestesses, and the people in this world, they all thought that it was a natural thing to help him expand his mist soul army. In the final analysis, all the living beings in this world were Hydra's children. Therefore, was it Hydra's preference to her bride? Oh, I shouldn't keep staying in this world. As long as I'm still the White Emperor, I can't be a good man any longer. P.S. Volume 1, from C1 to C62, Volume 2, from C63 to C144, Volume 3, from C145 to C244, of Starchild Escapes Arranged Marriage. Chapter 309, The Battle God Comes. Countless prayer flags and silk ribbons blew in the wind. The biggest ceremony in the water god's world started. A strange light bridge dropped from the clouds. It was for greeting the visiting team that was sent by the Sky Sword God's domain. Incidentally, the investigators from the Sword Palace were also in the team. After sleeping in Hydra's dream for thousands of years, the water god's world finally opened to the outside world. Today was doomed to be recorded in the history book of the water god's world. On the light bridge, the tutors of White Lotus Sword Palace stood behind the White Lotus throne, holding their breath carefully, because there was a woman sitting on the throne with a not ladylike at all posture. She was one of the legends of the entire Sky Sword God's domain, the Battle God, the Sixth Sky Sword. Cassina. She didn't look like a female swordsman, because she had brown skin and slender legs, wore exotic clothes and had a pair of fetters on her feet. If ordinary people saw her, they would think that she was a dancing diva. Only the people who had experienced her attack knew how terrible the strength her slender legs contained. When Cassina, the battle god, got serious, even a real god would be scared. However, it only meant the Cassina when she was in battle. At other times, Cassina was just a lazy lady who didn't mind her appearance at all. It was said that once upon a time, she really went to a circus troupe to be a dancer, because she lost her way and needed money for her traveling expenses. Of course, the tutors of the White Lotus Sword Palace didn't have the guts to ask her whether the rumor was true. Sky Swords, no matter who the Sky Sword was, had enough capital to do what they wished without restraint. As the sixth Sky Sword, Cassina also had a great potential to be the fourth deicide Sky Sword, just like Shea Longness. Even though Cassina was not ladylike at all, no one dared to scold her, because it was her right as a strong being. Most people paid their attentions to the sword on her back. The Sands of Time was the sword's name. It was famous as a legend-ranked artifact in the entire Sky Sword God's domains. Just looking at the sword, people would see an endless desert that had infinite sands spreading to the end of the world. Every second, there would be gravels dropping from the hourglass-shaped sword handle and return to the hourglass following some fantastic rules. The sands stood for the most mysterious rule in the entire universe, time. In legends, if a person could understand the rule of time, the person would be able to see all things in history, at present and in the future. Throughout the endless gods' domains, there weren't too many time-type artifacts. No matter whether it was a human or a god, they could never leave their traces in the river of time forever. It was said that the sands of time could be used to look into the past, observe the present, and forecast the future. It was one of the top 3 artifacts amongst all artifacts. Sadly, Cassina never used this sword, and due to that, no one knew the true power of her sword, the Sands of Time. To the people living in Sky Sword God's domain, swords are everything. Countless people dreamed that they would witness the true appearance of the Sands of Time, and the tutors of White Lotus Sword Palace weren't some exceptions. When Cassina appeared in front of them, their eyes were immediately captured by the sword on her back. The longer they looked at the sword, the more mystery they felt from this sword. They knew it was a realm they could never reach during their lives. It deserved to be one of the top 3 artifacts. As its owner, Cassina was more unfathomable in their eyes. "Your Honor, we are almost there." After a long while, a tutor hardly moved his eyes away from the sword and noticed Cassina. "Well, really?" Leaning on the throne, Cassina stretched herself leisurely. Her legs stretched out and her toes huddled up like some cute little rabbits. She had become a famous female sky sword over hundreds of years, but the time left no trace on her body. Just like all legend-ranked beings, the battle god wasn't immortal any longer. They were called legend because they not only had devastating power, but also had a long life. When history became legend, legend became myth. Their names were eulogized by people from generation to generation, and they were still alive. Not bad. It seems that Hydra has reached that realm. Cassina sat up and squinted her eyes, looking at the sailing jellyfishes in the sky. These translucent jellyfishes weren't just some ornaments in the sky, they were the protectors of this world. If any being wanted to enter this world, it would be scanned by these sailing jellyfishes first. Once void creatures tried to enter this world, they would be expelled by these seemingly harmless sailing jellyfishes. Sailing jellyfishes stood for life. The butterflies of death stood for death. The two different but also similar creatures formed the circulation of life and death in this world. The two fantasy creatures were the balancers of this world created by the water god. Since Hydra could create the two fantasy creatures, it meant that she had really become a god. She wasn't a god that needed faith, but the real god that could create a brand new world. From a fantasy creature to a god, it was really a tremendous progress. Although Hydra had paid too much for this, and still needed to sleep for thousands of years, it was still a successful business. At least, even Cassina felt a bit jealous, because Hydra had found her own road as the water god. P.S. Volume 1, from C1 to C62, Volume 2, from C63 to C144, Volume 3, from C145 to C244, of Starchild Escapes Arranged Marriage. Chapter 310, The Witness to Legend-Ranked Beings. Their nature of life had changed, becoming a form that was close to some rules in the universe. Generally, they were called fantasy creatures. The sailing jellyfishes and the butterflies of death were natural fantasy creatures. They were born with the rule of life and death that could be regarded as the lowest legend rank. They were still at the lowest legend rank, because they didn't have wisdom. Even so, they were not some creatures that could be defeated by any hero-ranked being. They were inherently stronger than most beings in the countless gods' domains. Hydra gestated them and helped them develop their own power of rule. This could prove that Hydra had entered the realm of gods. Shea Longness was slightly inferior to Hydra, because she was still a step away from this realm. She could be called a real god. Of course, as the child of slimes, it wasn't a difficult thing to go across that realm to Shea. She just needed more time to let quantitative change lead to qualitative change. Otherwise, she couldn't fight against Cassina for such a long while. In fact, Cassina also looked forward to it. The hand feel when she punched Shea's body was very good, she was content with it. To Cassina, Shea Longness was a very competent sandbag. Although Shea was still a bit naive now, it wasn't a big problem. When Shea really grew up, becoming a monster above all monsters, it would really be an excellent experience to beat her down. Well, I think I need to say thank you to that little boy. After wool gathering for a long while, Cassina finally walked down the throne in front of the public, walking to the highest seat on the left of the water god's temple with her naked feet. Today, she would be a witness, recognizing the water god as a new member of Sky Sword God's domain. Having the sixth sky sword as its witness, the water god's fantasy island status was even slightly higher than White Lotus Sword domain. After all, it was a kingdom building on a real god's body, having a god and two fantasy creatures as its protectors. How could the small White Lotus Sword domain be compared with it? If it wasn't because Hydra's real body was still sleeping in the eye of the storm, it wasn't up to White Lotus Sword domain to accommodate the water god's fantasy island. Predictably, once the news of the water god's world spread in the gods' domains, the status of White Lotus Sword domain would also rise due to that. In fact, many masters of God's domain had been startled due to this news, and it could perfectly explain the abnormal transformation of stars before. Hydra's recovery, a real god's resurrection, could change the stars, although the change was still too big. Now, only Cassina had arrived at the water god's world, but soon afterward, one big shot after another would come to visit this world. It was a world that was protected by a real god. Even in Western God's domain, it could be called a fantastic sacred land. Perhaps even in the entire Sky Sword God's domain, only the Great Xia, the oldest sword domain, could compare favorably with this world. Hydra wasn't a nobody, because she became a god. She was already a famous fantasy creature overlord. Before she became a god, she was eulogized as the best genius amongst all fantasy creatures. After disappearing for thousands of years, her name appeared in front of the public again and she was a god now. After hearing this news, Hydra's old friends, the strong fantasy creature ladies, would undoubtedly come to this world one after another, making this world a paradise of fantasy creatures. Thinking of it, Cassina looked at the boy that was nervously standing on the stage. He really had a bright future. Perhaps he hadn't understood what it meant to be a god's bride and how lucky he was. Why do I feel she is looking at me? Yunshi nervously looked at Cassina, who was sitting on the highest seat, and looked at him up and down with curiosity. Undoubtedly, the sixth sky sword was the strongest being Yunshi had ever met apart from Hydra and Shaolongness. He experienced the strong power of her martial arts using his own body. Even the slime sky sword, Shaolongness, was punched her teeth through the back of her skull by Cassina. Her godlike martial arts, the magnificence of sky dance, was Yunshi's last trump card to save this world. Without it, even if Yunshi could defeat Shaolongness, this world would be destroyed. Compared to Yunshi's nervous behavior, the Celian Queen behaved more generous and perfect. After Yunshi exposed the secret of the Mist Tide and saved this world, the Celian Queen had nothing to worry about. At this moment, the sailing jellyfishes were flying in the sky, and the butterflies of death were dancing in the mist, forming the circulation of life and death of this world. The Lamia Queen shook her tail and moved to Yunshi's left, just like what she did when Yunshi proposed to his 1,000,000 brides. Her long screw tail rolled up onto Yunshi's waist, standing for her unshakable love. It was a love that would never be shaken no matter how many brides Yunshi had married. On Yunshi's left side, the Mermaid Queen glanced at the Lamia Queen and showed a mysterious smile on the corners of her mouth. She was humming a ditty the mermaid girls knew. The mermaid girls under the stage heard the ditty from their queen, their spirits raised high and their mood became excited. As expected, our queen, hoo. This time, the White Emperor, the Lamia Queen, and the Celian Queen. There is no stage that is larger than this. That's really enviable. Looking at the excited mermaid girls, the Celian Queen let out a sigh involuntarily. What a group of naughty young girls. Even though the youngest Lamia was still older than her, the Celian Queen still thought that they were too childish. P.S. Volume 1, from C1 to C62, Volume 2, from C63 to C144, Volume 3, from C145 to C244, of Starchild Escapes Arranged Marriage. Chapter 311, The Mermaid Girls Like NTR. 1. The Mermaid Queen was in a good mood. She was different from the Celian Queen, because she didn't need to achieve any heavy mission and didn't need to carry on the mermaid race's line. After all, the mermaid race was a long-lived race and was very popular with other races. Even though the human race instinctively disliked sea races, when the sailors saw the beautiful mermaids that were singing, they would be entranced and stupidly drove their ships into dangerous areas. Of course, the mermaids also believed in the water god. They wouldn't watch them die. They would laugh at the sailors but would also send the sailors and their ships back to the safe seas. Mermaids were carefree and blessed with optimism and enthusiasm. In the water god's world, they were the sea race that was blessed by their god. They didn't have a terrible power, a strong body or a slender screw tail just like Lamia's, because they didn't need them. The mermaid race didn't have any natural enemy in this world. Apart from worrying about the reproduction of their race, which was a problem that was also torturing the Lamia race, they had nothing to worry about. And this was the problem. They were too perfect. If they wanted to eat, they would go to the sea and start singing, then a lot of fish would swim to them and become their food voluntarily. If they wanted treasures, the entire shallow sea was their garden. They could find all kinds of priceless shell, agate and coral there. The sea was their home and their shelter. As long as they didn't go to the deep sea, where the Lamia race's territory, they wouldn't face any danger. In this world that all beings believed in the water god, no one dared to hurt the mermaid race. They were a rare race that was beloved by all races on the ground and in the sea, so they naturally became the crossing mind bridges between the ground races and the sea races, and it wasn't a problem to them since their voice could move people's souls. To humans, life was a problem that needed them to make tough choices constantly. To mermaids, they had a long life and were loved by all races. Life was an easy problem they could solve with their eyes closed. Throughout the history of the water god's world, apart from several unlucky mermaids who were involved in the mist tide and met the butterflies of death, mermaids rarely died due to accident. Therefore, do mermaids feel happy? In the eyes of humans, they were happy, and mermaids themselves also thought so too. However, as time went by, mermaids gradually found that their souls started to dry up. Their happy lives gradually became awfully dull. Gorgeous pearls, jewels and agates were their favorite treasures, but after obtaining too much, they got bored. They didn't need to hunt fish because they would come to their mouths when they felt hungry. They got bored. Boring, boring, life is too boring. They didn't have any challenge and enemy in their lives. Today was just a repeat of yesterday, and tomorrow would become a repeat of today. The most perfect life also meant the most boring life. They couldn't find any surprise in their lives. If every day was just a repeat of yesterday, even if they had countless treasures and were adored by more people, they couldn't find any meaning of their lives. They couldn't feel happy any longer. They usually thought happiness was as natural as breathing to them, but in fact, they were not happy at all. After realizing this, despair appeared in the mermaids' hearts. At that time, the biggest reduction of the mermaid race began. No, the mermaids who died weren't being killed by outside forces. They just felt extremely disappointed about their lives and the world. They finally went into the deepest sea and returned to the arms of the sailing jellyfishes there. It was probably the darkest time in the history of the mermaid race. The number of mermaids reduced down to 1/3. A lot of mermaids chose to return to void after losing the meaning of their lives. People didn't understand why beautiful mermaids disappeared one after another. They offered various of gifts to mermaids, trying to save their lives in this manner, but their effort was utterly useless. In order to break this fate, the remaining mermaids went out of their way and asked all races for help. Finally they found the root of this problem. The mermaid race was too perfect. If they had a short life like mankind, they didn't need to worry about this, because the life of dozens of years wasn't sufficient for them to enjoy their short happy time. Unfortunately, just like the Lamia race, the mermaid race was a long-lived race too. Their looks wouldn't even become old. Apart from the mermaids who died in accidents, there was still no mermaid that had died due to growing old. As long as they didn't go into the Mish Tide, they wouldn't meet any danger. Yes, they were too blessed. This was the problem. Because they didn't lack of anything, the mermaid race didn't have any motivation to move forward. In this case, they even felt confused about the meaning of their lives. No, this cannot go on. However, they didn't know how to solve it, because this world was too easy mode for the mermaid race. Till one day, a mermaid met a drowning prince. At that time, the mermaid just decided to die. She would go to the deepest side of the sea and return to the arms of the sea in the lullaby of the sailing jellyfishes. She just accidentally saved the prince whose ship just shipwrecked on her way to death. Till now, nothing surprising had happened. If the accident hadn't happened, the mermaid race would still be struggling in their darkest time. Maybe it was the mercy of fate. The prince dazedly mistook the mermaid for his fiancée. He thought that his fiancée saved him, so he kissed her with gratitude. However, after the prince completely woke up and found that he kissed an unknown lady, he showed a disappointed and sorry look on his face. Sorry, I shouldn't kiss you. I mistook you for my fiancé. P.S. Volume 1, from C1 to C62, Volume 2, from C63 to C144, Volume 3, from C145 to C244, of Starchild Escapes Arranged Marriage. Chapter 312, The Mermaid Girls Like NTR, 2, Sorry. I shouldn't kiss you. I mistook you for my fiancé. Every word the prince said made a heavy blow to the mermaid's heart, who just prepared to continue her journey of death. If having to describe her mood, it was like a lost shipmaster who just found a new continent when he had given up hope. This man, he didn't like me. After obtaining her kiss, the mermaid that was born in the most beautiful race, his first word was sorry. There was really someone in this world that wouldn't be charmed with mermaid's beauty. This prince still loved his fiancée with all his heart and soul. Undoubtedly, the mermaid race was the most beautiful race in this world. They could capture people's hearts simply by using their sweet singing voice. There were barely people who could resist their voices. Ordinary people's hearts would be captured by their voices even before seeing their real appearances. Do you like your fiancé? The mermaid asked with a strong, strange emotion rose in her heart. Yes, she is my childhood sweetheart, the girl of my best love. Although it was just a political marriage at the beginning, but I gradually really fell in love with her. Even though she is just a delicate heiress who can't even live alone without servants and has a lot of weaknesses, but to me, she is the most perfect girl in the entire universe for me. The prince said in a shameful tone. In his eyes, the mermaid was undoubtedly the most beautiful female he had ever seen. Unfortunately, he had had the girl he liked, and he had decided to take his responsibility as the heir of the king. So he wouldn't hesitate to marry his childhood sweetheart, the useless aristocratic miss. If he didn't meet his fiancée, his heart would probably be captured by the mermaid in front of him, because her beauty was so exceptional that it could shake any mortal's will. Fortunately, he wasn't an ordinary person. He was a knight that had the potential to reach the hero rank. Therefore, he could hardly control his heart from being moved by her charm. His heart had been filled with another girl, so there was already no room for a second person. Your childhood sweetheart is the most perfect girl in the entire universe for you. Listening to the prince's heartfelt words, the mermaid's eyes brightened up with a strange look on her face. Yes, she had found it. She had found the fountain of emotion that could moisten her dried heart again. How long ago did she last have this feeling? She felt as if she just returned to the moment when she first opened her eyes looking at this beautiful world in front of her foster mother, the sailing jellyfish. She vaguely realized that this sudden emotion could change the fate of the entire mermaid race. The mermaids were natural winners that had obtained everything from the beginning. Food, wealth, power. Nothing was hard to obtain for the daughters of the sea. Is there still something the mermaids couldn't obtain? Yes, there was. The mermaid race hadn't realized this in the past, but she just saw it, felt it, and touched it. It was a human's heart. To be precise, it was love, which was more beautiful than gems, purer than pearls, and more valuable than agates. Love was the most adorable treasure they hadn't obtained, and the prince in front of her had such a treasure, which granted him the power to refuse the mermaid's charm. If she fell in love with this prince, what will happen? The mermaid thought and did it. Because mermaids all produced the next generation with the sailing jellyfishes, most mermaids didn't even think of falling in love with the beings of other races. In this story, the mermaid was the first, and the first mermaid who experienced the pain of love. The prince deserved to be a knight that had the potential to reach the hero rank. He loved his fiancée and never betrayed his love. The aristocratic miss was protected and loved by him like a flower in a greenhouse till the end of her life. As for the mermaid, after saving the prince, she turned her tail into human legs using a secret magic and walked to the human kingdom. Her exceeding beauty made countless men go crazy, but no one could go into her heart. Her goal was clear from the beginning to the extent that everyone knew. For that goal, she went to the royal palace and became the queen's best friend. Yes, the prince had ascended the throne and married the aristocratic miss at that time. She helped the king develop the kingdom, making his kingdom strong and prosperous. Everyone thought that the beautiful and virtuous mermaid should couple up with the king, and they didn't believe that anyone would refuse her love. Unfortunately, the heroic king was an upright knight. He was still deeply in love with his wife and refused the mermaid's proposal over and over again. During his life, his love to his wife never shook. After the king and the queen lived out their happy life, the mermaid stood in front of their grave in silence. Yes, when all was said and done, the mermaid had fallen in love with the couple, not just the king. She came with evil in her heart, trying to break up the couple, but was finally forgiven by both of the king and the queen and became their best friend. Maybe it was a tragedy in the eyes of other people, because she had paid almost everything but still grasped nothing in her empty hands. Only the mermaid herself knew what a treasure she had obtained from the two people who loved each other. It was the most everlasting and valuable treasure in this world. To love, to look for the people who deserve your love, then fall in love like a flying moth darts into the fire. Don't mind, will it succeed or fail, or rather to say, a sad love that will never bear the fruit of happiness is better. It can let us grow up. We don't lack happiness and sunshine, but we do lack sadness and tear. If you can have a bitter love that can make you cry, then your heart will never dry out. Only NTR is immortal in this world. Oh, my ancestor, your words are right. Holding her shoulders in her arms, the mermaid queen smiled looking at the white emperor and the Lamia queen. She was feeling the acid, bitter and painful love in her heart. Undoubtedly, this love would become an eternal memory, hiding in the deepest side of her heart as her most valuable treasure. P.S. Volume 1, from C1 to C62, Volume 2, from C63 to C144, Volume 3, from C145 to C244, of Starchild Escapes Arranged Marriage. Chapter 313, The Celian Queen's Whisper. Wearing the crown which stood for the highest wisdom and right of humans, the Celian Queen lowered her head and half knelt in front of Yunshi. Silver ribbons blew in the wind on her back. The Celian Queen clearly knew her mission at this moment. Her existence, even the birth of the first Queen Elizabeth, was for this man, this moment. The god's lover is their lover. In the circle of life, the name Elizabeth was inherited from generation to generation, when the old Elizabeth died, the new Elizabeth would take over this mission. She was celebrating that she was the first Elizabeth who could accomplish this mission. She hesitated and rebelled against her mission in the past, but finally understood her responsibility in the face of the cruel fate. Humans had two most important days in their lives. The first was their birthday. It was the beginning of everything, the day the small life opened its eyes, looked at this world and emitted its first cry. The second was the day they suddenly understood the meaning of their lives and how to keep going on the road of their lives. When Elizabeth was still a little girl, she hesitated, wandered, rebelled and lost. Till she inherited the mission of her family and became the Celian Queen, she finally vaguely realized what the Elizabeths were waiting for from generation to generation. Today is a special day. Holding the water god's scepter in her hand and listened to the euphonious tinkles of bells on the scepter, the Celian Queen looked straight at Yunshi's eyes under the mask and said lightly, "Maybe you are still hesitating. Do you still feel this world is just a pipe dream?" Yunshi was shocked. He looked at the Celian Queen in surprise. Has she found out? Amongst all the people in the water god's world, only she had looked through Yunshi's mind. Yes, to Yunshi, even though he had stood on the highest stage of this world and achieved the highest achievement of saving this world, but in his heart, he still thought that this was just a fantastic dream. He couldn't force himself to consider this a real world, including himself in this world. The exalted White Emperor, the man that was beloved by the god, the master of this world. Compared to the identity of a common baker, these identities were too far-fetched. Everyone naturally regarded him as the favorite of this world and the highest apostle. Only Yunshi knew these good things came too fast and sudden. He was at a loss for what to do. He wasn't prepared to be the White Emperor. When he challenged the invincible Sky Sword at all costs, he didn't prepare to return and be the White Emperor. They were the things he saw and experienced in this world letting him perform his decision. It wasn't for glory or legend, nor rather to be the master of this world. It was really a simple reason that drove him to challenge Shenlongness. I want to protect this world and save the living beings in it. I don't want to see this world destroyed. He never imagined that he would become this world's master. Till the last moment, he finally understood this world wasn't fake but really existed. Well, it was really a huge mess. If you still feel uneasy, look at me. The Celian Queen smiled gently after seeing through Yunshi's thought. He is the hero who saved this world, he is the only emperor of this world, but now, he behaved so childishly, it was both funny and cute. Yunshi looked at the Celian Queen. Under the protection of the water god's god power, time left no trace on the beautiful queen's face. Today, Elizabeth was just like her ancestors, beautiful and attractive, bright and sacred. Yunshi instantly remembered her white, jade-like beautiful body. Under the bell of blessing, her cute body was as tender as a bamboo shoot, her every slightest movement could let him feel the most wonderful hand feel of her warm skin. In the hot spring, her slender legs shook in the air, her white toes were as cute as shells. In the room of the temple, when the sunlight dropped in the morning, shining on her beautiful body that was half covered by her priceless robe, she looked like she was walking out of a painting. In the last several days in the water god's world, she had left too many wonderful memories for Yunshi. Do you understand it now? The Celian Queen said, as if she had guessed what Yunshi was thinking, then blushed. Even though she had learned very hard and could almost recite the prohibited book, The Shameless Demon and His 1,000 Daughters, when they entered the actual combat, she still felt too shy, so that they could do nothing actively. Maybe this was a kind of talent. Apparently, she couldn't open her heart and do whatever she likes at any time, just like the Mermaid Queen and the Lamia Queen. However, she still understood a thing, which could be the most useful knowledge she learned from the prohibited book. When you don't know what to do, listen to your lover's words. Chapter 314, The Lamia Queen's Gaze. The last was the Lamia Queen at Yunshi's right side. Just like the Mermaid Queen and the Celian Queen, she was also half kneeling on the ground. However, she was more bold because her long screw tail was wrapping around Yunshi's arm. To the Lamia race, this was the token of their love, the ceremony for mating. Unlike the Mermaid Queen who was liked by all races, Lamias were born with a curse. Because the Lamias were called the strongest race in the water god's world, even though they believed in the same god, humans were still afraid of the Lamia race. They would never get in contact with the Lamia race or other deep-sea races unless it was necessary. In the eyes of humans, even though they had the same faith, these Lamias from the deep sea were still some indescribable nightmare monsters. In rumors, deep-sea races liked to eat humans. Apparently, it was just a rumor. Anyone with a mind could find what a groundless rumor it was after thinking for a while. How could any human live in the deep sea? Therefore, how could the deep-sea races develop a habit of eating humans? After all, the deep sea was death to humans. Even if throwing a piece of iron into the deep sea, it would be pressed flat, not to mention YHR humans. Most deep-sea races could naturally shrink their bodies, endure cold and darkness, therefore, deep-sea creatures' natural physique was totally different from the creatures that lived in the shallow sea and the ground. The Lamia race was a rare deep-sea race that could adapt to the environment of the ground, the shallow sea and the deep sea. They were veritable overlords in the water god's world. Amongst the three water gods' high priestesses, the Lamia queen was also the strongest. However, Lamias didn't do so well on the road of love. They were not just brainless deep-sea monsters, they didn't think that other deep-sea races were similar to them at all. Naturally, they wouldn't mate with them no matter how strong the deep-sea creature was. They were also not human, people were afraid of their screw tails. They even said that Lamias could turn humans into stone with their eyes. The Medusa is the creature that can petrify humans with its eyes, not Lamia. The girls of the Lamia race often wanted to yell at the humans who spread this rumor. Do you really have any common sense? Medusa is a god-blood creature that looks like a female human with living venomous snakes in place of hair, and Lamia was a deep-sea creature that looks like a female human with a snake tail. Medusas are demigod creatures, and Lamias are the believers of the water god. They were totally two different kinds of creatures. Unfortunately, once a misconception formed, it would be too difficult to remove it. Although Lamias had strong power from their bloodline, they still avoided appearing in front of the public, wandering outside of the Celian city for thousands of years. The more so, the more mysterious they became in the eyes of humans, and even more terrible stories about Lamia spread around the world. Even when the Lamia queen appeared in Celian, although people knew that she was one of the high priestesses, a lot of ordinary people would still be scared. Due to this, after the sailing jellyfishes disappeared, the Lamia race faced the biggest crisis of reproduction in their history. Fortunately, they met the person who changed their fates. At the beginning, they knew they didn't have any other choices, they could only accept this answer, marrying the White Emperor who was the only person that could help the Lamia race keep proliferating. Most Lamias accepted the White Emperor's proposal because of curiosity and the feeling of freshness. But soon, they found the world became different due to the marriage contract with the White Emperor. Because they had become the White Emperor's brides, they suddenly had a lot of partners. These partners weren't just from other deep-sea races, but from all kinds of races, and most of them were humans. The Lamia queen left the deep sea for the reproduction of their race, but gradually, they had a lot of friends from other races and didn't keep being mysterious. They started to walk and play on the streets and in the streams of Celian. Fear and unease were due to lack of understanding and communication. Because they didn't have any communication channel with the humans, they couldn't even make the first step and could only see the rumors becoming more and more bizarre. After they became the White Emperor's brides, they finally dared to walk in the Celian city. After talking with the humans, they found that people didn't really hate them so much. Especially the girls who had also become the White Emperor's brides. They not only were not hostile to Lamia's, but also helped them solve their problems of living in human society. Lamia's recipes were different from humans. They liked to eat living animals straightly. It wasn't an unacceptable problem for humans. Lamia's liked to sleep in dark, wet but also clean places. People helped them build special rooms to ensure their good sleep. In turn, when humans lacked a labor force to build large buildings, it was the time that Lamia's strong strengths could be of some use. Lamia's slender screw tail could easily roll up the items that were dozens of times heavier than their weights. Soon after, they became the main force on rebuilding the water god's sacrificial altar. In armies, Lamia's strong combat power were more attractive to all human commanders. The Lamia army's combat power was 10 times stronger than any common army, and they were even 100 times stronger when they were in the water. Becoming the White Emperor's brides was a turning point for them all. Taking this opportunity, the people in Celian finally accepted them. Their slender screw tails became a fantastic scene in this city. The Lamia queen looked at this happening and firmly remembered it in her heart. It was this man bringing all the changes to the Lamia race. She was willing to wrap around his waist with her screw tail forever. It must be our destiny. Recalling the meeting of that day, the Lamia queen's eyes became burning with desire. When she saw him the first time, her bloodline was yelling, "Eat him." It was a powerful thirst that she had never experienced before. The Lamia race was the closest to Hydra's bloodline. As the descendant of the water god, she thought that her mood was affected by her bloodline at that time. However, it doesn't matter. She found pleasure in it. Trust in your man wholeheartedly. Isn't that the best example of being a good woman? Chapter 3:15. Do you want to be my disciple? The Mermaid Queen stood for the shallow sea races, the Lamia Queen stood for the deep sea races, the Celian Queen stood for the Celian city and all mankind, the over 1 million brides from all races and the tutors from the White Lotus Sword Palace were all looking at Yunshi, looking at the actual dominator of the water god's world. Till now, Yunshi still couldn't believe that he did these things. Was it really me? He remembered the nervous feeling he had when he first came to the water god's world, the uneasy feeling when he first met Hydra, and his confusion after becoming the water god's apostle. Everything he had now was just the treasures he obtained in a dream. Did Yunshi really dream of being the White Emperor, or was it just a trick of the stars? Maybe he was still in the dream trial, maybe after he woke up, he would return to reality. He and the Starwing Knights girls were still waiting for rescue on the island. The 1 million brides would be a memory that only existed in his mind. When he occasionally remembered it in the future, he would also laugh at this ridiculous experience in the dream. Oh, how good it will be if I'm still dreaming. Yunshi smiled bitterly and took the crown offered by the 3 queens. It was the gift from the 3 high priestesses and all living beings in the water god's world. It was a gift for their new emperor. 9 different gems were installed on the transparent crystal crown, each gem stood for a meaning, and they perfectly fitted the White Emperor mask as if they were born for that. The magnificent ruby. The clear sapphire. The profound black obsidian. The sacred moonstone. The colorful diamond. The golden crystal. The silver ice crystal. And a pair of ambers, which looked like living sailing jellyfish and butterfly of death. To be a crown it was too gorgeous and delicate, it would be more convincing if it was a bride's ornament. Oh, right, isn't my other identity of the White Emperor the water god's bride? It's really embarrassing. After putting the crown on his head, Yunshi walked alone to the top of the water god's sacrificial altar, looking at the highest-ranking visitor walking to him with a smile. Today was the day in memory of defeating Shealongness, the 10th Sky Sword, and the day the White Emperor was formally recognized as the dominator of the water god's world. At the same time, it was also the beginning day the water god's world opened to the outside world. Of course, since the water god, Hydra, was still sleeping, the White Emperor needed to take the responsibility to deal with all these things. However, Yunshi had a feeling that the beauty that was walking to him was going to have a good laugh at him. It must be my delusion. After all, she is the venerable sixth sky sword, the battle god, Cassina. Yunshi tried to hypnotize himself. He was just a common baker in a common small town not long ago, and now he had to sign the established diplomatic relations contract with a sky sword. This wouldn't even happen in his wildest dream. What kind of look should I have on my face? Is my clothes decorous? Did I do something wrong? Oh, I really should let others who had a richer experience do this. Unfortunately, no one could replace Yunshi on this. He was the only person who was entitled to welcome Cassina in this world. Are you afraid of me? Looking at Yunshi's nervous face, Cassina shrugged her shoulders and stretched out her hand. Subconsciously, Yunshi took a step back because his instinct was strongly warning him. Danger! Danger! While Yunshi's body was possessed by Cassina, he beat Shay-Alongness down easily, and now he experienced what Shay-Alongness was feeling at that time. I can't escape, I can't defend against her attack, all efforts will be useless. Cassina's hand caught Yunshi's body like an eagle catching a chicken. He didn't have any chance to resist. Shay-Alongness once used the Dark Shadow Spider Queen's power, forming a prodigious dark shadow web in the entire water god's world to hunt prey. Cassina didn't need such a thing, because her hand were already an overwhelming web. The sensation of asphyxia was more terrible than anyone could imagine before they really experienced it. Don't panic, boy. Cassina easily caught Yunshi in her hand and pinched his cheek with one hand. It's soft, the hand feel isn't bad. Cassina smiled and patted Yunshi's shoulder. I take a good view of you. Although you are still too weak now, but you have a strong potential. Do you want to be my disciple? Sweat streamed down Yunshi's face. He had almost agreed to Cassina's offer. If it wasn't for his 4 ex-girlfriends being even stronger than Cassina, he could enjoy a lifetime of carefree life under Cassina's protection. Unfortunately, it was impossible. Although Cassina was the strongest person Yunshi had ever seen, she couldn't be a match for his 4 ex-girlfriends. Lulu was just a common apostle sent by one of his ex-girlfriends, and she was already a strong legend-ranked dragon. Yunshi couldn't imagine how strong his 4 ex-girlfriends actually were. Therefore, he had no choice but to refuse Cassina. Sorry, I think your battle god genre isn't fit for me. Yunshi declined Cassina. Oh, you like to fight in water? Cassina asked and cocked her head. A human who doesn't like to fight on the ground but likes to fight in water. What a rare genre. What made you have that conclusion? Because I don't want to practice the battle god genre, the best martial arts on the ground, so I'm a person who likes to fight in water. Does such a human really exist in the entire universe? Yunshi felt both funny and annoyed. Due to that, the awkward atmosphere between them was relieved. Yes, this is it. You should smile because you are still young. Why do you always look worried? Even if the world will be destroyed tomorrow, we should still have a happy fight today. Cassina raised her lips and pinched Yunshi's cheek again. Well, the hand feel is really not bad. His skin is not bad, everything is not bad, his body has perfect flexibility and agility. What a good body with a great potential. Chapter 316, I don't agree. Not bad, very well. Cassina pinched Yunshi's cheeks and felt the soft and rubbery hand feel. She smiled like a tiger who just caught a delicious prey. In her eyes, every part of Yunshi's body was perfect. Don't look down on the softness and flexibility of skin. It was a rare natural gift even amongst millions of people. In the endless gods' domains, this was one of the two fantastic body constitutions all martial artists dreamed of obtaining: soft body. The soft didn't mean weak, the soft was compared to another fantastic body constitution, rigid body. The representative being who had the rigid body were the lava giants. Their bodies were as hard as steel. To humans who had this special body constitution, they were born with super strong strength, and their bodies were also different from ordinary people. If traced back to the source, it was very likely that their ancestors had giant bloodlines. The people who had the rigid body was a natural warrior. Even if they didn't practice any martial arts, they could still be invincible generals on the battlefield. Correspondingly, they needed to eat 10 times more food than ordinary people. On the contrary, the soft body was totally different. The people who were born with the soft body were a much lesser person than the people who were born with the rigid body. So far, no one could explain the reasoning behind the form of this special body constitution. Compared to the rigid body, the soft body had advantages on flexibility and agility. The people who had the soft body could bend their bodies to an extent that was far beyond ordinary people's imagination. However, it didn't mean the people with a soft body couldn't build their muscles. The rigid body and the soft body were all rare body constitutions that wouldn't even appear amongst a million people. The people who had one of the two body constitutions were more likely to reach the legend rank than ordinary people. If taking this as the starting point, the two special body constitutions could be subdivided into small branches such as Berserker, Bloodthirster, or Iron Body. They were all directly leading to the road of becoming immortal. Cassina herself was an owner of the soft body, and she had stridden across the boundary between softness and rigidness, becoming a legend-ranked martial artist that could use the magnificence of sky dance, which was a world-class martial arts. From the hand-feel of Yunshi's body, Cassina was sure that the White Emperor had the rare, soft body. His soft body was so perfect that it could even be compared to Cassina's body when she was still immortal. Between the two super body constitutions, the rigid body was normally inherited by men and the soft body was inherited by women. It rarely had an exception. The man who had the soft body was really as rare as the hair on a phoenix. Even in Cassina's long life, this kind of men could be counted on her fingers, and Yunshi was the only person who had this innate body constitution but hadn't formed his own battle style. No, Cassina thought that it wasn't a natural body constitution, it was more like the after result of removing all the impurities in his body. After experiencing an evolution of his life form, he finally made his body pristine. At first glance, his body was like the soft body, but when Cassina looked carefully, she found that his body was even much better than that. Is this the gift from the water god? Cassina pinched Yunshi's face again. She affirmed that it wasn't a natural body constitution but a gift formed by a real god source power. No wonder Hydra fell into a deep sleep again. Cassina wondered why Shay-Alongness invasion made Hydra consume so much energy, and now Yunshi's body constitution explained it. Hydra, just how much do you love this boy? In order to give him this gift, you were even willing to sleep thousands of years again. I can't just see this body constitution being wasted. Cassina straightly ignored Yunshi's refusal. She felt that she had just found a very interesting toy. Her road of martial arts had almost reached an end. No matter how many strong enemies she would defeat, it wouldn't make her become a bit stronger. Because of this, she recently stopped practicing herself and returned to her home place, Sky Sword God's domain, and helped Hydra teach the 10th Sky Sword a lesson on her way home. After seeing Yunshi's special body constitution, she suddenly had an idea. Maybe it could be her turning point on her way of becoming stronger. She thought that if she could observe Yunshi's learning path, she would find some inspirations from him. Oh, he just refused. Sorry, but I didn't hear anything. Okay, it's settled. White Emperor, would you like to establish diplomatic relations with Sky Sword God's domain? Compared to her own wish of having a new disciple, the diplomatic statement was just a trivial matter to Cassina. I do. Yunshi didn't expect the process would be so simple. Shouldn't it be settled after a series of long negotiations over several months? Okay, then you will be my disciple. Cassina nodded her head naturally. Wait. I haven't agreed to that. Aren't we talking about the established diplomatic relations contract between the two worlds? Anybody else got a problem? Cassina didn't mind Yunshi's opinion at all. All sky swords were wayward. The probability for a conformist to become a sky sword was 0. All sky swords were monsters above monsters. They all had their special tempers. Although Cassina wouldn't destroy a world like Shay-Alongness tried to do, but once she decided to do something, she would do it immediately and never feel any regret. This was her, Cassina, the battle god. I don't agree. A whoop of rage suddenly sounded in the air. A girl holding a broken sword in her hand jumped on the stage, stared at Yunshi and ground her teeth tightly. As sweat streamed down Yunshi's face, he remembered how horrible Huahua's anger was again. Chapter 317, Angry Huahua. This wasn't the Huahua that Yunshi was familiar with. Compared to her performance in the final battle with Shay-Alongness, Huahua looked far stronger and more terrible today. The broken sword in her hand, although its shape hadn't changed, it was undoubtedly not the sword used in the battle with Yun Quebec. It had become a much more terrible weapon that was emitting an aura from another dimension. On her body, the flames of rage were burning. If she just vaguely guessed that the man with a silver mask may have some relationship with Yunshi. Then now, after jumping on the stage, she looked as if she had just obtained valid evidence. Her eyes looked as if they were saying, "Don't pretend, I know you who are Yunshi." Yes, she had noticed the truth that no one in the water god's world had found out. Even Yun Kei didn't guess it. The White Emperor is Yunshi. It was her privilege as Yunshi's childhood sweetheart. Only she, the girl who grew up together with Yunshi, could find this truth, step by step. After confirming it, she had no hesitation in her heart. She didn't mind that challenging Yunshi was equal to challenging the whole world, because she wouldn't let Cassina, the sixth sky sword, take her Yunshi away at this moment. Therefore, she jumped onto the stage. What is broken can be reforged. Today, I will reforge your lost soul. I will challenge you. With hot flames burning inside her eyes, Huahua said, looking at Yunshi without blinking. She didn't care if she would become the enemy of the whole world. Her sky-flying bloodline wouldn't be bound by anything. It was a supreme bloodline of freedom and boundless possibilities. Her childhood sweetheart was being controlled by the strange silver mask, and so he made so many mistakes. Huahua thought that she had an obligation to rectify this situation, making the world return to normal. She didn't care that this mask helped Yunshi save the world, she only knew that her little she became a bad boy after putting on this mask. Yes, this couldn't be done by Yunshi's own will, her childhood sweetheart wouldn't marry a million girls. It was too ridiculous. Look, once she opened her jealousy radar, the entire Celian city was covered with innumerable red points. The number of the red points was over 1 million and was still increasing. Did my little she do this and that every day with the 1 million girls in the past several days? It makes me feel jealous. No, it is insufferable. My little she couldn't be such a shameless man. Moreover, this bastard looked much older than her little she. Therefore, there could be only one reason, Yunshi's body had been possessed by the weird mask. She would save Yunshi from the bondage of this mask. Even if it meant that she would be the enemy of the Sky Sword and this world. Well. I quit from this quarrel, Casino looked across at Hua Hua and Yunxi, then shrugged her shoulders and stepped back. Let the two little guys deal with each other's business. Yes, Casino wanted to see what would happen between the boy with the soft body and the girl with the sky-flying bloodline. Wait. I don't agree. It's 10,000 years too early for you to challenge our White Emperor. Even though you are our guest, it's still too impolite. Immediately, Hua Hua had over 1 million enemies. Humph. It's none of your business. Go away. Hua Hua answered. What? We came to him first. You are nothing. The girls became more angry. This is my battlefield. As Yunxi's childhood sweetheart, the person who spent the longest time with him, Hua Hua said confidently. Plus her sky-flying bloodline helped her avoid being influenced by any negative emotions. Even though she was 1 on 1 million, she didn't feel any fear. Oh, Yunxi sighed. He understood Hua Hua had confirmed his real identity, but she misunderstood something, otherwise, she wouldn't be so hostile. The sailing jellyfishes set up an energy shield. If you want to challenge me, you need to prove your power. Yunxi summoned dozens of sailing jellyfishes and let them set multiple life energy shields. He knew how strong Hua Hua was. If he wasn't in the water god's world, he had no chance of defeating Hua Hua. Only here, on this special stage, he had an opportunity to fight against Hua Hua. He was also curious about how strong, at this moment, he himself had become. And also where the limits of his childhood sweetheart, Hua Hua, were. Yunxi loves Hua Hua. So far, his love hadn't faded away. Compared to being the White Emperor, he preferred to be the common Yunxi. If I'm still Yunxi and not the White Emperor, I couldn't refuse any request from Hua Hua. He had never expected to be Hua Hua's enemy. Unlike the battle on the Island of Mist, he didn't have his 1 million brides power at this moment, because the trial of the stars had ended. Now, he was just the White Emperor. Maybe she had also noticed it. After all, she was Hua Hua. Very well, I will let you die in one piece. Looking at the White Emperor mask on Yunxi's face, Hua Hua had judged it as the White Emperor's real body. In some sense, she was right. As long as Yunxi was still wearing this mask, Yunxi was the White Emperor, the water god's apostle and bride. And also, he was the enemy Hua Hua was going to defeat. Chapter 318, The White Emperor's Fighting Stance. Above the sky of the Celian city, one sailing jellyfish after another appeared, setting up the energy shields around the stage. As the highest-ranking fantasy creatures in the water god's world, they stood for life, therefore, the shields made by them was the safest protection in this world. The noises around them gradually quieted down. It was the additional effect of the shielding voices. This was what Yunxi told the sailing jellyfishes to do. He didn't want any accident to happen and affect their battle. He and Hua Hua, the White Emperor and the Challenger. Although they were surrounded by over 1 million people, this was still their own, two-person world. Let my little she come back, otherwise, I will tear you into pieces. Hua Hua said in a threatening manner. If I say no, what can you do? Yunxi smiled bitterly. Where could he find another himself returning to Hua Hua? The White Emperor was Yunxi. Even though he had put on the mask and was called another name by all people, he was still himself. He didn't become another person. Even he himself felt that this reality was too unreal. It was all the fault of Yunke's expansion plan of 1 million brides. Yunke left this world so carefreely, but he had never thought what would happen to him. No wonder that Hua Hua doubted that I'm not my own. What a big misunderstanding. Hey, it seems that you are still trying to pretend. Hua Hua turned more hostile. He can't be Yunxi. My little she won't speak to me in this tone. Since he is not my little she, but just a body that is possessed by the evil mask, then all the mistakes this body made weren't my little she's fault. It's all this cursed mask's fault. The so-called White Emperor isn't my little she, but this mask is. She finally understood why she didn't know it was her little she when she first saw this man. It wasn't simply because he was wearing the mask and his body became more mature, it was because of his temperament. It was just an evil soul that was controlling little she's body. Looking at Hua's serious face, Yunxi had finally figured it out. This is an inevitable battle. The little she in Hua's heart is me, but also not me. Perhaps in Hua's heart, the White Emperor who married 1,000,000 girls was a heinous bastard. But it wasn't the truth, unfortunately. Yunxi couldn't explain it. Because the White Emperor was indeed himself. Yunxi wanted to deny it, but he knew he had to come back to the real world. This was not a dream anymore, but the reality. Therefore, he was indeed the White Emperor who would accept Hua's challenge. For the first time, he and Hua stood on the same stage looking at each other. He was also curious about how strong he was now, and what a graceful bearing Hua would show in the battle. Oh, I really am a bad man. Just because I want to see my cute childhood sweetheart's most excellent side, I chose to fight against her. If other people knew my idea, they would undoubtedly laugh at me. Hua, do you know that? I still love you so much that I cannot extricate myself from the White Emperor. Countless mists gushed towards the Celian city from all directions. Although Yunxi had lost his 1,000,000 brides' power, however, the realm he once experienced was still living in his brains. His body firmly remembered that realm and used the power that belonged to the realm naturally. Fight for me, my brides. Yunxi murmured and summoned the 3 high priestesses' mist souls. Both of his words and movement made Hua's anger rise to the sky. The Water God's Opera House appeared behind Yunxi. The 3 high priestesses' mist souls stood on the 3 stages. Since he had decided to fight against his powerful childhood sweetheart, he would show his strongest side too. The 3 mist souls looked at each other and started to sing at the same time. It was a song and a prayer, the will of the entire world contained in their voices. It was the blessing the world granted to Yunxi. Along with the song, 9 crimson ribbons spread out from Yunxi's crown. Although they were not the 9 snake tails that appeared when he fought against Shaolongness, they were also made by Hydra's god power. The 9 ribbons stood for Hydra's 9 lives. It was the White Emperor's fighting stance. Now, Yunxi was wearing the white sailing jellyfish's robe, the silver White Emperor mask and the water god's crown. He used the 3 artifacts from the beginning, because he didn't dare to let Hua have any chance of attacking first. Hua, who hadn't reached the hero rank, could even beat down his mist soul army as a mortal. Nothing was impossible for her, and it would be too inadvisable to preserve his strength in front of her. Arf! You are not my little she. You are not. Compared to Yunxi's 3 gorgeous artifacts, Hua only paid her attention to the 3 beautiful figures on the stages behind Yunxi. Her eyes almost burned with jealousy when she looked at the 3 singers behind Yunxi. They are all casting loving eyes at my little she, singing and praying for him. What an unpleasant feeling. You are just a mask that possessed my little she's body. How could you make these horrid mistakes using his body? Even if Yunxi could wake up from this nightmare, he will still be entangled by these women. Look at what a trouble you have brought to him, the White Emperor. Your hideous crime is deserving of the harshest punishment. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.